14th, 2021 Historic Zoning Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and for the record, we've got 7 of our commissioners here. Mr. Mann, Ms. Marquardt are not. Everybody else is here. I'd like to entertain a motion now to approve the August 9th, 2021 minutes. Is there such a motion? Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ken. Any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have an amendment to make, and that's going to be on page 4, paragraph 4, from the top. There should be the word inserted before blasting vapor.
Okay, I'm not, wait a minute.
Did you get that, Ms. Rose?
Oh, vapor blasting.
Rather than blasting the building, should be vapor blasting.
Yeah, it's vapor blasting. That's correct. Good catch.
I didn't catch that.
Anything else?
I didn't either.
You got that?
I did.
Okay, anything else? Then all in favor of the minutes as amended, then please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I'll abstain just because I wasn't here for the August meeting.
Okay, we'll cross you off.
There you go.
I don't think
You're not listening.
you're not listed.
No, but just from the vote.
Oh,
Since I wasn't
okay,
here.
got you. All right, announcements. Amanda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to announce that we have 2 upcoming Design Review Committee meetings next week. The first is on at 3 o'clock on September 20th. That's a week from today. And it will be a special called Design Review Committee meeting to discuss the upcoming Franklin Grove proposal. There is a proposal for a development plan and rezoning at the property formerly known as the Moore College of Design. So it'll be here in the boardroom. And then at 4 o'clock, we will resume our normal schedule with the regular meeting with our COA application items for discussion.
Okay.
And I did also want to note that on tonight's agenda, item number 2, which is a discussion of a preliminary recommendation request from the Historic Zoning Commission for the proposed Emmeline Acres subdivision, has been withdrawn from the agenda by the applicant. So item number 2 will not be discussed this evening.
All right.
And I believe Ms. Dannenfelser has an
Ms. Dannenfelser.
update as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Amanda. I wanted to talk a little bit about the special DRC meeting planned for October 4th at 4 p.m. in the City Hall training room. And the topic for this meeting is the preliminary master plan for the new City Hall on the square and the results of the public engagement process that occurred this spring. It's an opportunity for DRC to review the master plan and focus on the overall form of the building, the setbacks, height, scale, building step backs, and massing. We will be showing how the consultant has incorporated a lot of the feedback already provided by the DRC at the site walk in this master plan. The master plan was released to the public today, so it's hot off the press. It can be found at our at the website www.completethesquare.com. We will send you that link as well. When you look at the plans, what you won't see is architectural detailing at this point. So you won't see elevations or windows or doors or the architectural details or materials. What we're really looking at is the big picture and how it relates to the historic context. So we hope that you can make it on October 4th. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, now we're ready for any non-agenda items. And the non-agenda process by design is reserved for emergency instances. Non-agenda items shall be considered only upon the unanimous approval of all Historic Zoning Commission members. Are there any non-agenda items? All right, hearing none, it's time for citizen comments on items not on this agenda. This is open for Franklin citizens to be heard on items not included on the agenda. As provided by law, the Historic Zoning Commission shall make no decisions or consideration of action for citizen comments except to refer the matter to the planning director for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for historic zoning consideration at a later date. Are there any citizen comments on items not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we're ready for item number 1, zoning ordinance annual update and historic preservation overlay rezoning recommendation request for 264 Natchez Street, the Merrill Williams House, and 446 11th Avenue North, the McLemore House. City of Franklin is the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an annual update to the zoning ordinance of the City of Franklin, and there are a couple updates that are related to historic preservation. So the first two on this list of 3 is really just an update for your information. You won't be voting to make a recommendation on that tonight, but it does relate to historic preservation. So we wanted to bring that up as we bring the HPO rezoning request to you for consideration tonight. The first one is a change to the preliminary HCC recommendations. The Historic Zoning Commission reviews development plans in the HPO and makes recommendations at an early stage to the Planning Commission in BOMA. We would like to incorporate rezonings specifically related to the HHO, which is the Hillside Hilltop Overlay District, and the SCO, the Scenic Corridor Overlay District, when there are nearby historic resources that may be impacted by a rezoning. The second one is to extend the expiration for certificates of appropriateness. Currently, the expiration is at 1 year with a 6-month administrative extension. The proposed change is to extend this to 2 years, just to give more flexibility for the applicant. We're finding that it takes longer in this time with construction demands to start that process, and that 2 years reduces the administrative burden on staff, but still allowing for the 6-month extension for that. So I will turn it over now to Victoria, which is why we're here tonight, really the HPO rezoning request for 2 properties.
Thank you, Kelly. So we have 2 proposed rezonings to the Historic Preservation Overlay District for the McLemore House and the Merrill Williams House. In recognition of the property's historical significance, the property owners of these 2 individual properties have worked with city staff and requested the properties be rezoned and placed within the HPO. So first up, we have the McLemore House. It is located at 446 11th Avenue North in the Hard Bargain neighborhood, and it was constructed around 1880. The McLemore House was constructed by the formerly enslaved Harvey McLemore, and descendants of Mr. McLemore remained in the house until 1997, when the Heritage Foundation of Franklin and Williamson County, as well as the Williamson County Habitat for Humanity, purchased the lot. Today, the African American Heritage Society has converted the historic house into the McLemore House Museum. And next up, we have the Merrill Williams House, which is located at 264 Natchez Street in the Natchez Street National Register Historic District. And this house was constructed around 1881. Moses Merrill, a formerly enslaved man, acquired the property the house stands on. And then in 1892, he sold the house to the A&C Williams family. Williams was a prominent African-American businessman in Franklin, and the house stayed in the Williams family for generations. Today, the African American Heritage Society is fundraising to secure the house and to create a heritage center in the Natchez neighborhood. So it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission make a motion to recommend approval to the FMPC and BOMA for the proposed HBO district rezoning.
Thank you. Any other comments from the applicant, which happens to be the city? Okay, hearing none, are there any citizens that wish to comment on this application and request? Hearing none, we need a vote then a motion then from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I'll recuse myself since I'm on the board of the African American Heritage Society, but I support this strongly.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Ken?
I move that we approve the rezoning of these two properties.
Well, you're recommending approval to the Planning Commission and to BOMA.
Correct.
I'll
Okay.
second that, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Brian. Any discussion?
I can't love this enough. It's wonderful to see these part of the historic preservation overlay.
Thank you, Ms. Besser. Any other comments? Then, ready to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous then with one recusal from Ms. Pierce. So we're ready then for the next item, which is number 3 on your agenda, but it's actually number 2. This is the consideration of demolition accessory at Bicentennial Park located at 200 and 214 North Margin Street. Again, the city of Franklin is the applicant. Staff analysis.
Thank you, Chair Roberts. Forgive me just a moment. The City of Franklin is requesting approval for the demolition of the pavilion that's located at Bicentennial Park, which is at the intersection of 4th Avenue North and North Margin Street, just a couple of blocks away. I'll pull up the plan here in just a moment. As you can see on the screen in the exhibit, the location of the pavilion is at this intersection. It is currently at the location where the city is proposing to build out Bicentennial Park. In February 2021, the southern portion of the pavilion collapsed under the weight of the ice during the inclement weather. As a portion of that fell, the southern portion of the structure pulled away from the remaining portion, and damaged portions of the structure remain. And upon the city's request, the consultant, which is Barge Designs, performed a site visit to observe that damage. Based on conversations with the city staff requested to replace the collapsed portion of the structure with a building type that is like this existing structure and utilizes existing foundations. So you may recall that the city brought forward an application to the Historic Zoning Commission in June to seek approval to replace the collapsed portion and to establish some other improvements that would help in furthering the master plan for the park. By late spring, the city had contracted the demolition and removal of that collapsed portion and also further worked with the consultant to do a full structural analysis to better understand how the new structure would attach to the existing. And upon that, it was determined that there would be some issues. And so we do have a structural analysis, and I did provide that information to you as part of the application, that would require that an extensive amount of work be done that may limit the ability to move forward. And due to the structure's association with the former Georgia Boot Factory and the project being close to 100% complete in design, the city is seeking to replace that structure with a prefabricated steel structure that would replicate the existing one and provide the community with a rental event space and park for years to come. The concrete slab will remain, and attached to your application were the architectural specifications that you can review that were very much the same thing that you reviewed in June, as well as the proposed future action on site, which is stylistically in keeping with what was approved in June. So I will also turn it over to my colleague, Shahad, from the engineering department, who can elaborate further.
Yes. So after the structural analysis, we took a look, and as you can see, the structure is not safe for public, and we recommend demolishing the structure and keeping the concrete slab. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on this application? Hearing none, we need a motion, Commission. Don't everybody speak at once.
Mr. Chair, I move to allow the demolition of the structure.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a second?
Second. Oh,
Thank you, Mary. Okay, comments? Mr. Laster.
I do have a comment. So what will go back in its place on the original foundation?
We would like to replace it with a similar structure. It will be a prefab metal building. I think, Amanda, do you have the?
Did we not approve this before?
We approved, so what we approved was the portion that collapsed. We took that out, and then we came back in front of this body, and we approved just that portion.
Yes. and
After we took
redoing
it
the
out-
other was before it was determined that it needed to be demolished. Isn't that
Correct.
right?
Yes. So we
Okay.
took that out, and after we did the structural analysis to whatever was left, it was deemed that it's not safe. So we're seeking to demolish the remaining as well and just build the whole thing. It will match, it will look uniform, so.
And the reason I actually had asked that question had to do with the way the building was constructed before as the Georgia Boot. It had that deep V in the center, which caused the problem whenever we had the snow event. And I was just wondering, if we build it back like that, it just seems like we're asking for more trouble. And I think this is a great opportunity to actually do something that's more advantageous to the public.
We'll definitely follow the new updated rules and regulations to make it safe for the public, for sure. And we'll try to keep the historic character as well.
Will it still have that deep V?
You know what? It will, right? We've tried really hard to work with the consultant to make it look exactly the same. And we're about to, after this meeting, we're about to receive the 100% set for the plans and discuss with the consultant.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
The only other comment I would have is I hope that there will be some photographs of as it stands now, just for the sake of history. And the other thing, I'd had several people out there over the years to look at it for potential uses.
Okay.
And it may be an opportunity to do some amendments to the small slab section to make it more user-friendly, because I know, for example, the farmers market said that there would be huge load-in issues, and that might be true for other things. So looking at
Okay.
some kind of amendment where it wouldn't be noticeable.
Okay, so to
Might-
make it accessible to load and unload to the small portion, not just the back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Just might look at that.
We'll keep that in mind.
Any other comments? Ready to vote then. All in favor of the motion, then please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're ready for the next one. Item 4. Consideration of new construction at 255 4th Avenue South, Franklin Historic District, my father's house. Staff?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
This application was deferred by the Historic Zoning Commission during its August meeting to the September meeting tonight in order to allow the applicant to provide additional information on paint removal options. The main request being that a chemical removal be considered as a test on the historic portion of the building to determine the viability of that type of paint removal in being successful in removing paint. Applicant has provided some additional information. Staff did not receive that information until after the time that the report and recommendation was prepared. So unfortunately, I'm not able to comment on that in the report I provided, but I did want to share a few notes. The Historic District Design Guidelines recommend that historic masonry remain unpainted if it's already unpainted, so as to allow the character of the building to be a defining feature. Further, painting of historic masonry can be damaging to a historic building as historic brick expands and contracts moisture, and painting it could provide an issue in trapping moisture inside of the brick. Further, the guidelines say that historic masonry should not be damaged and that, the original masonry should be preserved, maintained, and if abrasive cleaning is needed, then it shouldn't occur at all. Steam cleaning is appropriate per the guidelines, with chemical cleaning only being used if steaming is ineffective. The applicant has provided some information related to the chemical test after doing the vapor blasting test, which is a similar type of process to a steam cleaning. Based on the recommendation provided by staff, the applicant contacted a Prosoco representative, which is a type of product representative that is associated with chemical removal for paint, in particular Safe Strip being their product of choice. At this time, staff doesn't have information about the exact product used other than it is a Safe Strip product, and that the exhibit provided in your report and recommendation demonstrates the results that had been provided by the applicant. Further, the applicant provided a report to my office on Friday, which I've shared at the days for each of you that you're able to review, and I can pull that up on the screen as well. It has some additional information and some photographs. To be clear, the first test that was completed was the vapor blasting method on the non-historic portion of the building, and then over the course of this last month, the applicant has provided for the chemical test to the left, to the right of the vapor blasting test. So when you viewed it on the building, you could see both tests side by side. The applicant also tested the chemical paint removal on the historic portion on the inside of that L, so you could see that clearly from the location where the non-historic building was tested. I will now turn it over to
Yep.
the
Welcome,
applicant.
Mr. Paez.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
back.
you. Thank you very much.
We're going to put you on the commission next.
I don't know if but basically, I contact Deborah Brooks. She's the representative from Prosoco, and they gave me some samples on the 6th of this month, together with a couple neighbors. We applied the product. We did the testing, and you can see the picture in the older part of the building. We let that's the older part of the building. It's like 3 by 3 feet area, and we let it sit for an hour, and then we apply water pressure. So that's that part. And also we did a test in the newer part of the building. And you can see the picture, it's on your right. The other side was the, how do you call it? And we basically did the same. And with probably something that I didn't add it was that in the older part, we put 2 coats of the Prosoco. Safe Strip is the name of it. So my conclusions, and you can see the results, it's if we want to see a better result, we have to put a lot of pressure on the brakes to remove the paint. I think that the product, it's very effective, but it has a lot of cracks and crevices. So to remove the rest of the paint, you have to apply more pressure. And that is probably the hard part of this process, to remove the paint and have the results that we want to. So basically, in the light of the results, we consider that if you allow us to paint, we will work that out with you, listen to your recommendations. Yeah, that's about it. I don't know if you have questions.
And may I add a couple more comments, please? I did want to clarify, what you see on the screen right now is the result of 2 layers of the Safe Strip chemical peel with some removal by water pressure, so a water pressure washer. The painting of the brick is not recommended by the guidelines, but the guidelines also recommend against further damage to the brick. It would be staff's assessment that if the commission chooses to paint or not, further removal of paint from what you see below, right here, would be recommended against, because it would be staff's opinion, due to the texture and pitting of the brick, that if 100% removal is attempted to be achieved, it would cause damage to the building. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Frias, why don't you just hang with us up here in case there are questions, and let me ask if there are any citizens that wish to comment on this application. And if you'll come, and those that do, if you just come to the podium and identify yourself and your address, and then make your comments.
Good evening, Commissioner, Commission. Thanks again. Chuck Rose, 4th Avenue South. I think we met last time when I happened to be a accidental speaker. I was here for something else, and I'm a neighbor, and I walk by this church every day. And as I shared last time, I got involved because a lot of the folks were like, what is going on with the church? So I was actually one of the volunteer pressure washers on Labor Day. Walter Green and myself decided to help out. So what I'd like to add to what Pastor Neal said for your edification is, we talked about the pictures. That is 2 coats. That was an hour. That 3x3 you see took us an hour. At the highest the pressure washer would allow us to do. And what you can't see there is the left-hand side of that picture there. That was with no chemical, but pressure washing at the same pressure. So it did nothing. And I was the guy using the pressure washer. That paint wouldn't move. So I wanted to add that. Amanda mentioned 2 coats. We let it sit for the maximum recommendation, which is 60, 1 hour, 60 minutes. Minimum was 15 minutes, maximum was 60, 1 hour. 2 coats of the chemical. So that, as you see the left there, that is vapor. I thought that was sandblasting. That's vapor. What did you say,
Vapor
Brian?
blast.
Vapor blast. Good.
Yeah.
That, as you guys have seen, that's pretty damaging. So what we did was a cost analysis. If you had decided to say, let's put this chemical all over the church, old and new, what would that cost? With labor cost included. Now, this is a rough estimate. I don't do this for a living. Matter of fact, we had a couple of folks stop their cars and said, hey, can we get your card, because can you do this for us? And we were like, hey, we're just helping out somebody here. I don't do this for a living and don't plan on it, but I guess it depends on what they pay us. So 5-gallon container of the chemical stripper is $380. Roughly the older part of the church is 1,700 square feet. The newer part is 1,300. So in total, about 3,000 square feet. And this, again, is back of the napkin.
Sir, how much is the old part of the church?
1,700.
1,700.
1,700 for the old, 1,300 for the new. Okay. Older and newer, relative. 380 for a 5-gallon container stripper. We estimate the labor rate of about $40 an hour. Now, that may be high, but this is the labor rate we use, because if you tried to hire anybody to do this stuff these days, you know, A, they're hard to get, and B, they're going to charge whatever they want to charge. So that's a rough estimate. So adding cost of materials, the chemical stripper, scaffolding is set up, time on station, disposal, $40 an hour. We estimate the older part only, again, 1,700 square feet, about $13,400. The newer part, about half that, give or take, maybe 50% of that. So in total, this project, if you were to recommend to paint, so to speak, with the chemical, the entire old and new church, is probably going to be $30,000, $25,000, give or take. So I thought that might help you make your decision. Again, the 3x3 section took us 30 minutes. The paint, the primer was acrylic, and as I understand what some of you guys said, Brian, maybe it was you, the acrylic allows it to breathe, so that's a good thing. I think that's the end of the comments I'd like to add to that. You didn't say that, sorry. I dreamed that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other citizens who wish to comment? Okay, Commissioners, we need to have a motion then.
I'll make a motion. I move to issue a certificate of appropriate for the proposed masonry alterations
To do what?
and allow it to be painted. Due to the associated cost, and it will not achieve the desired results.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Discussion.
Mr.
All right, first of all, let me ask the three people who were on the, what I'll call a subcommittee to do further research after the last one to respond, and what you individually or collectively have found out since that time. Which, I'll give Ms. Pierce first. I'll get the two ladies first, and then we'll let Brian get a shot.
In the middle of all this, I got breakthrough COVID, so that kind of cooled what I got done. But I did, as I had disclosed last time, had a conversation with Michael Lee, who did not get there because the man that would have done it was out of town, to give them a price. But he has done paint removal in Hohenwald on 2 buildings downtown successfully. And he said that if the church would choose to use volunteers, he uses a different chemical pill than this one, or puts a different chemical on, but he said it is effective. And he felt like that with a couple of skilled people, that the lower part could be done by volunteers, and the higher, would require someone getting on scaffolding to do it. But he did feel like that it was doable. I did go by the church and made observations, like it would appear to me, I don't know how you're going to spray paint it all without taking out a good bit of the established landscaping. And I did notice that there are windows that look like they're about to fall out. So I hope all that will be considered. There's also places that don't have mortar, which if it's spray painted, I don't know how that's addressed, but I think it would need to be addressed. And then I reached out, because of my condition, to Susan, who got some information by getting on a listserv, so she can speak to that.
Okay, Ms. Worthington.
I had spoken with a manufacturer's rep regarding the chemical process, and he had recommended a couple of products, and I'd forwarded that on to Amanda, and had, commented about successful chemical treatment, removal of it. And I also went to the site to observe what was done, and I thought it was acceptable based on not deteriorating the brick any further. And my comment too would be, behind the bushes, nothing's been done to it, so the original brick is there. So whatever treatment ends up happening, there's the condition behind the brick. So removal of the paint would have the appearance of what the very first shot, this shot, would look like. And then behind the little boxwood hedges is the original brick. So that's a consideration if the chemical process was chosen.
Brian? Oh, Brian, go ahead.
Might as well start with Susan, I think.
Okay, Susan, excuse me.
So I did put the question to the National Alliance for Preservation Commissions to the listserv. And by and large, the responses that I got from my colleagues was that their particular municipality would ask them to remove the paint, and they felt like that was what we should be asking. And I did go to the site. I did notice that the windows concerned, the windows that are deteriorating, and that the area behind the shrubs had not been painted. I will not be able to support the motion. I feel that that it's still the best to remove the paint. So.
Okay, let me add something. Okay.
We'll ask you if we got something. Brian, would you comment?
Ms. Rose, do you have that picture that I sent to you? I wanted to ask Ms. Rose to show a picture that some of you may find unrecognizable.
I don't.
So this is a place we all hold dear to our hearts on Main Street in Franklin. Where you see the Dollar General store sign, that's actually where 55 South is today. And where you see the Shake Shingles, that's the Franklin Theater. So this is in the 1970s, which is hard to believe. But by 1989, there was a group of visionary people who saw behind the aluminum-clad front buildings and the signs on Main Street, and they realized what Franklin could be. And they really weren't people who were old fuddy-duddies who didn't like change. They actually knew that if Franklin became a destination for people, that it would be an economic engine driving the economy. And that's been one of the things that's happened here. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is I've talked to a lot of people in the community. So it's not just to you, Mr. Paez, but also to our community who have expressed to me what they think about the Historic Zoning Board. Is that often that the board makes decisions based on what they like and they don't like. And I must admit, I thought that years ago as well. But when you become a member of the commission, you're handed this book. And so in 1989, the city of Franklin, by buy-in from the community, decides to put in a historic zoning overlay. And with that historic overlay comes a commission and comes guidelines. So it's been my experience on the board, when projects are presented to the board, we weigh that project in light of the guidelines. And there are times we do make exceptions to that, but usually it has to be for a very good reason. I know we found two methods so far that we've asked, and we appreciate you working with us and finding the result of those methods, one being the vapor blasting. So the guidelines say don't paint unpainted masonry, but it also says don't harm the masonry either. So we find that the vapor blasting method could potentially harm the masonry. So that's going to be hard to support. The chemical method, right now, because of the deeply textured nature of that brick, is also going to take time and going to take expense and money. But at this point, I have to support the guideline in this. It seems to me that this can be done with the cooperation of the community, of volunteers, as well as financial resources and help. And so that's my comment. So one more comment I have is that I did talk to several people about paint removal. And some said it would be more time consuming to remove the paint because of the deeply textured part of the brick. So it is going to be a challenge.
Are there other comments? Ms. Worthington?
I have additional comment too. Has there been a consideration to leave the annex building as painted and the historical building having the paint removal so that we would have the historical portion return to its somewhat of its original brick look.
So are you making an amendment to the original motion, which was to paint both sections of the building?
I don't know if I'm making an amendment, but I'm just throwing something out there. Was that a consideration
Okay,
at
well,
one
then
point?
let's proceed on then, if we're not ready to make an amendment on it. And are there other, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I am very sympathetic to the cost, I will say that. That said, the guidelines were, and I know that I was here not for the August meeting, but the prior meeting where, I know there was a mistake made, but the guidelines are in effect. What I have not heard from anybody is we know that painting the brick can have a negative implication on the brick. That's why we don't, that's one of the reasons we don't paint the brick, right? And so when I hear comments that doing more could damage the brick, I've also am hearing, from the guidelines and from Ms. Rose that painting the brick can have a negative effect on the brick long term. What I've not heard from anybody is which is worse. Is it worse to paint the brick and potentially seal in that moisture? Is it worse to, do more damage? I've not heard anybody with any expertise coming and offering this commission any expert advice about that. So
Wait a minute.
so that concerns me. But then beyond that, I do have to say I'm hearing a lot of potential additional options. So I have concerns about supporting that motion.
Mary?
I was going to say, to the point of which damages the brick the most, the ones that are done like you all did on Labor Day, everything that I've been able to read, and I've spent a few hours looking at different informations on painting brick, and that is not, it is not damaging to the brick to do it in a softer way using an approved
Paint formation.
chemical that's approved. So I would have to say that painting it, especially when there's existing water issues, could be very damaging to brick.
Okay.
And I guess I'd just say in response to that, Ms. Pierce, I think the request being made is really an extraordinary one for the commission, in my view, given the guidelines. And so I would expect to see, like, if the applicant's advocating that it's more difficult or more damaging for it to be removed versus painting, I'd expect some additional information with expertise on that, somebody with expertise on that topic to come forward for me to be able to support that.
But I would say this. You've just heard Mr. Rose up here talk about the sample they did with strict water pressure on that primer. It's just primed, and it didn't come off. That brick's sealed right now.
Yeah.
I cannot in good conscience think that taking that paint, that primer off that building chemically, and just having it in that state is going to be a better solution than painting the building over that primer that's already been applied. I can't. Plus the fact, I think the cost of this thing, as whether Mr. Rose's numbers were high or low or in between. It's the first time we've heard something other than the prices that we had obtained from the company that did the vapor blasting of something to compare it to. So I am in support of the motion to paint the building. These are guidelines, and we're trying to follow guidelines, but we are where we are with this project. And I think we need to move on and give these folks an answer that allows them to go on about the business that they're in, which is operating that church. And that's what they want to do. So I'm going to be in support of the motion. So are there any other comments on this? Hearing none, then are we ready to vote? And I'm going to call the roll on this. Ms. Besser?
No.
Mr. Denton,
No.
Mr. Laster,
No.
Ms. Pierce,
No.
Mr. Scout,
Yes.
Ms. Worthington.
No.
All right, and I am yes. The chair votes yes. So, the motion fails. Is there another motion?
Can I add something? Can you imagine to remove the gallons of chemicals? Have you thought of that? How many gallons of chemical have to be applied to that wall and then to the damages of the bushes around the church? Can you think about it? Can you think about the water and all the gallons of chemical that have to be applied in order to achieve those results?
Okay, is there another motion? Is there another motion from the commission? I want to move this along.
I would make a motion that the church be allowed to leave the addition painted and then remove,
To paint what?
well, they've painted the addition.
It's prime. The only thing's on there is
Well,
prime.
to paint the addition and remove the paint from the historic church, the oldest part, the front part.
May I ask a question for clarification? What you see on the screen is the ability, after 2 applications and water pressure, are you asking for removal to the extent that you see on the screen only, or 100%?
To the extent we see on the screen only.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, is there a second to that?
I second that.
Okay, discussion.
The reason I made that motion is because I don't believe this was done deliberately. We're in a situation, so trying to address where we are would be my reason for that. The brick on the whole church is spectacular, honestly, but that, in my mind, would help meet the congregation.
Okay, other comments?
That would definitely lessen the cost of the entire project. Making it more likely that some type of partnership of donations or whatever might help the church. Another just suggestion on the painted part, if we leave it painted. Now, our commission has no review of colors.
Do you have your mic on?
There are many who seem to think that our commission has a review of color. And we don't have the review of historic colors on painted buildings. But we could suggest, because the guidelines do say that if you must paint masonry structure, that you do it with a historically appropriate color. And that could be worked out with Ms. Rose. I mean, that would have to be a suggestion. The board can't really make that as a motion. But it would help to lessen the contrast between the brick and the stark color that's on the addition.
So is that your amendment?
No, we don't have control, do we?
No, I'm not making an
Mr.
amendment.
Chair.
Okay. All right, other comments? All right, you ready to vote then? As I have it written, the motion is to paint the addition on top of the primer that's already been applied, and then remove the paint chemically to the same view as what is shown on the screen up there on the old structure, which means you're reviewing it, you're removing the paint on two sides, I believe, because the other side has not been painted. The side toward town has not been painted.
Can I add something, Mr. Roberts?
Go ahead.
The thing is, when we remove the paint and that part, it's not gonna match with the other part that hasn't been painted. And so it's going to be two different colors, and then we will have three colors: white, 90%, and I can tell you, in the city, a lot of bricks have been painted, and it's doing fine. Those houses are doing you know that. You know that.
I'm not going to debate or argue with you on it. I understand that. I understand that.
No, just
All right.
just that
We're trying to get something moving along here so that we're not coming back and forth. Okay, are there any other comments? Ready to vote?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
the side that is on Fourth Avenue, that is on the side elevation, that doesn't face the street, does have a portion of that side that has been primed, just for the record. It's not
Yes.
just the two sides, but there's a
Well, it's
portion of the third
front.
side.
I'm sorry, the front and that side that you're referring to. The other side is maybe just partially primed.
Right.
Right.
All right, are we ready to vote then? We'll do another roll call. Ms. Besser?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Laster?
Yes.
Ms. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Scalf?
No.
Ms. Worthington?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. Okay, that's where we are then. To remove the primer on the old section and finish painting the new. That's where we are right now. Thank you. Okay. Next item. Is consideration of alterations, entrances, windows, awning at 236 Second Avenue South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a moment. Okay, the applicant is seeking a certificate of appropriateness for a series of alterations to the building located at 236 Second Avenue South. The Historic Zoning Commission deferred this item from the August meeting to the September meeting to allow for additional discussion at the Design Review Committee meeting in between. And the applicant did appear at that meeting to discuss. The proposed alterations are specific to the historic portion on this left side. As a non-contributing element to the site, the addition is not determined to add any historical or architectural value to the period of significance currently defined for this historic district. In the case of proposed alterations to non-historic elements, the alterations would be reviewed in light of the guidelines, but specifically in relation to how those alterations would impact the character of not only the historic district, but the building onto which the additions attached. So as you can see on the screen, the alterations to the left elevation of the building include doors and these porch elements. Previously, the applicant had requested to create 2 sets of double doors on this side. I'll go back to the last screen here. You can see the existing conditions. This is the part that is further away from the building. It's a rather long addition. So this is further away toward the back of the property, and this is the part in the middle. The applicant wanted to create a set of double doors here. There's a single door currently. And the DRC and staff had recommended that the applicant consider something contrary to a garage door element, which was the last request, because the garage door element is not necessarily in keeping with the residential character of the building onto which the addition is situated, as well as the neighborhood. So the applicant has come forward with an option for accordion door style configuration. Most people would refer to this as like a nano wall system. The alteration is mostly consistent with the guidelines, as they would recommend that new entrances not be added to primary or readily visible secondary elevations. And while the location is visible from the street, the rhythm and spacing afforded by the alteration is typical and would not adversely impact the character of the historic house or the overall district. Further, the applicant's proposing to keep the existing porch element you can see here and expand it. It's more of a residential porch covering, and to further add that to the back side as well. The expansion of the existing is appropriate as it's not historic, and the design is proposed to match the existing and to span the width of the new openings. The construction of the second in kind is also appropriate in keeping with the recommendations of the Design Review Committee. These covered elements are indicative of similar features that you see on historic residential buildings in this area, in both style and material. So moving on to the right elevation, it was brought to my attention that this rendering is not exactly indicative of existing conditions. So you can see on the screen here, this photograph is existing conditions. There is this element in the middle that's original, that has been painted, and the rendering doesn't show that. So I did want to point that out. It is recommended that new openings not be added to historic buildings in highly visible elevations. And so this door is actually proposed to be on a historic element of the building. It was recommended by staff to move forward, but that was based on a misunderstanding of the applicant's submittal. So it would be recommended that any sort of new opening be on a lesser visible area and on a non-historic area. The proposed windows are more in keeping with the rhythm and spacing of historic windows. They are a little higher placed than the existing rhythm, but they are more vertically as opposed to horizontally orientated, so that is more appropriate. So the recommendation for this item would be that the left elevation be approved as submitted, with the note that the manufacturer's window specifications must be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to the work commencing. For the right side, this would be a revision to the formal recommendation by staff, but I would recommend that the new door as proposed be placed on a non-historic portion of the building rather than the portion that is shown on the screen here. The non-historic portion being further down. This is an original window, and this is part of, well, I say original, it's a historic window. I'm not sure when this was added, but it is a historic portion of the building. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Trent Sullivan, Lions Inc. Was here last month, and thank you all. We attended the design review meeting that helped us a whole lot with reframing and presenting to you today. With regard to the door and the door placement, it's more about form and function. When I say that, it is the door is placed in that position to allow for ingress and egress to meet life safety code, okay? So it's not like I'm designing an interior of a home and can just rearrange the interior to make that work. The placement of that door has to be in about that exact location in order for us to meet guidelines for travel distance and life safety, okay? So we didn't simply place it there arbitrarily. We would do away with it if we could entirely, but it's needed for egress. The other thing is we've tried our best to mimic the size of the windows to the existing historic portion of the home. And then we also try to pick up on that same rhythm throughout this facade. The placement of them, again, I think we discussed that previously, but the interior use here is classroom on the other side, so to place windows down lower would then eat up a lot of wall space on the inside, so it's a form and function. Appreciate you guys, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Are there any citizens which comment on this application? Hearing none, we need a motion from the commission.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Besser.
I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed alteration.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you,
And
Ken.
for clarification, is that based on the written analysis? Okay, thank you.
Discussion. Comments?
I have a question I want to clarify.
All right.
So the door that we're discussing, I'm looking at the floor plan, and it would be at the top of the plan, is that correct, to the right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And so the way that it's laid out, that's a passage, and so if we moved it over, or if it was moved over, it would be into a room, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So currently, the current layout that we see, is it the layout that was there originally, or are you making changes to the interior?
There are interior modifications being made, correct?
So if there are interior modifications being made, wouldn't it be possible to place an egress door in another location on that side of the building that's down from the historic addition?
There is a door further down, but an additional door has to be placed, and the separation of those doors has to be as far apart as possible. You know, and they can't be close to each other, they have to be as far as possible apart.
So if the door were placed near where that current window is, that's on the newer addition,
Here.
if it were placed there, how far would that be from the other door, and would it meet code?
I don't think it will. Do you know the maximum?
Do you know the distance between the two?
I don't know that distance.
That would impact the layout of the classrooms inside, though. We'd have to completely redesign the interior.
Am I correct that you already have a permit for the interior work now?
Correct.
There's a permit under review. I'm not sure there's one that's been issued yet, correct?
Yes, we have submitted for review.
It's reviewed, okay, thank you. All right,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend the motion
all right.
to say that the historic window and portion of the house cannot be used for an egress door.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Mr. Chair,
All right, so that, as I understand, the historic window not be used for egress on the right elevation.
Mr. Chair, just to add that because the permit is in for review, we haven't verified whether that exterior door would be needed for life safety or not at this point.
All right, so would it, let me ask this question then of staff. Would it be better for this commission to defer the right elevation approval until we find out a little more information and deal with the left elevation only? Would that be more appropriate?
There are about 3 different options you can choose from, to my understanding. One option would be to approve as proposed by the applicant. The second being to approve an alternative location for an egress door on the right elevation, pending, conversation of planning staff with BNS staff to determine the life safety requirements. Interior arrangements may be desired, but they can be changed to meet all other requirements of the city as well. And so I certainly wouldn't want the commission to think that it would have to approve an inappropriate alteration if the guidelines would recommend against it to accommodate interior arrangement desires. But the third option would be to defer, and you could approve the left elevation so if you so desire. But there is an option to perhaps approve an alternative location and have staff work internally with the applicant to determine the needs of that particular door on that elevation and what would work.
Okay, all right. So do you want to tweak your motion in any way, or your amendment in any way?
I don't, unless someone wants to move for deferral.
Of the right elevation is what I'm,
Mr. Chair, may I ask the applicant a question? So I'm looking at the right elevation, and there's a transition from brick to, I don't know what the material is on the exterior. It looks like it might be painted brick. That door that you're proposing, that single leaf door on the right-hand side, is that in the existing structure? I mean, in the original structure?
It is, it's where that window is, that they're indicating
Okay, that's a
there.
better photograph
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
Okay.
that's,
Okay. So the slope of the roof there is part of the original structure?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. It's not,
would
it's not.
you
a-
identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry, I'm the pastor of the church that is currently owning this building. And so the 1820s home is the A-frame home. And so there was an addition off of that, and that addition off of that was the first addition. The second edition came out, the third edition came out, and the fourth edition came out. There are multiple additions on the back of this building. And so this where the window is the first edition. I have no idea when that first edition was done. I don't know if it was done 5 years after the home, or if it was done, 60 years after the home.
Okay.
But if you go inside that building, right where that window is, you can follow the brick wall of this historic home down that hallway. And you can see the back of this historic home and the brick home of this historic house. And that is not the original part of the house.
Okay. Obviously, the addition has the capacity to be a historic structure too. I mean,
Well, yes, sir.
yeah.
If that so deems that you guys see it as a historic, that's fine. I just want to make sure you all understand, it's not an 1820s, it's not the original house
Yeah, I think
above
you're
that window.
We understood that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there were multiple additions.
Oh, there are
But
4
I
additions.
knew that
Yeah,
was an
there are
addition,
4
yeah.
additions off the back of this house, and so.
Well, this brick and then the siding were done at the same time as part of a long addition. And Mr. Clark's correct, this was a addition that was done at some point in between.
Mr. Chair, I would take a stab at an amendment.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Well,
that,
Brian's already got
Okay.
one going, so.
Yeah, and I
And
would
you-
like to comment on this. So if you look at the other side of the building, you will, on the left side of the building, you will also notice the shed roof that comes off. So it could be that in the past, it was a porch, and that porch at some point was bricked in. I mean, that's very common, people looking for more space, but it is a part of the historic structure. It's not a modern addition. And the window that's on the right side is a historic window. In fact, the mortises for the original shutters are still there. What it appears has happened is when they added to the back a modern addition, for some reason, they needed some extra space, and they bumped the brick out and covered over that original shed roof on the side. And that's why you're seeing that bump out. And it actually comes out further than the window, so it looks like a veneer that's been put on the other brick. And that may be why you're thinking that's part of that newer addition.
Okay, well, let's get back to we've got an amendment, it's been seconded for the historic window on the right elevation not to be used for ingress and egress. Is there any other comment on that amendment motion? Are we ready to vote on that amendment motion? Then, all in favor of the amendment motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Ms. Besser? All right, Ms. Besser is the only one that voted no on the amendment. Okay, then we're back to the main motion as amended, to approve everything else except this amendment.
and Mr. Chair, I would like to offer an amendment to that.
Okay.
And that is that the applicant be allowed to come back to staff if another egress is needed, that can be, and it can be done in the modern day addition with staff approval. And the reason I suggest this, I think it helps the project move forward, and I do believe it's something that can be approved by staff.
All right, say it again then, Mary.
Okay. My amendment is that
An additional egress.
an additional egress, if needed, can come to staff and be approved in the modern-day addition, which is the long tail on the rear of the building, not the, what?
Okay, that's
The
good.
shed
That's good.
portion is the
Right,
part
not
that
in the
you're-
shed
I got it.
portion.
Okay.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ken.
Excuse me,
Comment?
Mr. Chair, don't you want to say alternate instead of additional?
No, if an addition, yeah, well, I was saying,
Alternate egress.
we've taken the first one off the table, so I just thought it would be an additional, but alternate is fine with me, to use that word.
Okay.
Is that good for you? Instead of another, we're going to use alternate. All right, any other comments on that amendment? Okay, we're ready to vote on that amendment. Then all in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. Unanimous, okay. Getting somewhere. All right, then we're back to the main motion as amended twice. Any more conversation on that?
I do have a question for the applicant, another, and those are the small windows that are put higher up on the right side of the building. Are they meant to follow the form of the windows that are in the gable, the upstairs gable
Yes, sir.
of the brick structure? And will they be operable? Will they be actually true divided light with double hung sashes, or?
The A15 shows that. Look at A15 in the drawings.
Yes, I can confirm that staff did review the window schedule, and they are not double hung, I believe, but they are 7/8 inches, mullion pattern, and the light pattern matches what's on the historic building. The exact window specifications are required as part of the condition of approval that staff's recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Ready to vote then on the main motion as amended twice. Don't ask me to read this. All right. All in favor of that motion, then please raise your hand. As amended. Okay, unanimous, 7-0. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay. Ready now for items number 6, consideration of alterations, dormer construction at 728 Fair Street. She's here.
Thank you, Chair Roberts. The applicant is here to speak to the item. The application was deferred from the August meeting to the September meeting to allow for the applicant to be able to attend to represent the request. So what you see on the screen is the existing conditions of the property at 728 Fair Street. The request is to place a single dormer onto the roof on each side elevation in order to accommodate the applicant's desire for egress from the upper attic area. The dormers feature a lap siding, and I'll go ahead and move ahead so you can see that. They feature a horizontal lap siding to match the existing on the house. The applicant's also proposing to utilize the smallest sized egress windows permittable, which I believe is 5.7 square feet that is required for egress in order to allow that to serve in the function as desired. Specifications on the materials for those windows have yet to be provided. The roof shape and materials, in accordance with the guidelines, contribute to the character of a building. So character style, historic character, roofing sections on main or highly visible elevations of historic buildings are recommended to be unaltered in order to preserve that character defining feature. The guidelines recommend that dormers be added only to rear or side elevations where they're not readily visible from the street, and to use designs, materials, and scale that are in keeping with the building character. As such, the proposal is not consistent with the guidelines, as the proposal to add the dormers to either side of this particular elevation would be highly visible from view sheds from the street view. The DRC that discussed this item at the July meeting recommended the applicant explore operable side lights that would offer less change to the character of the historic building. And I believe the applicant did explore that option and can provide you additional information on that. So with that, it is recommended that the commission deny the proposed dormer construction and encourage the applicant to explore additional options such as the operable skylights or similar windows that would not change the roof shape or character defining features of the building. And additionally, that the applicant is encouraged to explore options for adding an egress access from the rear of the roof form in conformance with the guidelines. If issued a certificate of appropriateness, the application must meet all the requirements of the city prior to issuance of a building permit, and any additional changes was returned to staff or the commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, guys. I'm Amanda McCreary, Chisel Workshop. When we met last time, we had shown this particular house, pyramidal style, with dormers on either side. We are coming back again with dormers as proposed. We did make them smaller in scale. I know that was a concern for sure, and this is a very rough rendering, but I wanted to place it in here because a lot of times we've had these discussions before. The flat elevations are really hard to read. So these dormers that are proposed are different from last time, as they are smaller in scale and actually a little bit lower on the elevation. These dormers are as small as we can make them to still meet egress in that existing bedroom that's up there. That is definitely our primary goal, is to get a means of egress on an existing bedroom that is in that area. We did look at the skylights, and I did study the property on 4th Avenue that we were discussing before. One of the major differences is when you have an egress skylight, a skylight window, and an asphalt shingle roof. One, your asphalt shingle roofs are typically darker and your skylights are darker, so it does aesthetically blend in with its surroundings. The other part is that the flashing on these skylight windows are black, and roofs, again, they're typically black, and they can sit a little bit more flush. So our biggest concern is from an aesthetic standpoint if we move to a skylight window. So we have a green roof, a green metal roof, and we will have a black skylight with black flashing around it if we move towards the skylight window as opposed to the dormer construction. You will see the black flashing pieces, and the skylight will sit slightly higher than they sit on asphalt roofs. I know, Mr. Scalf, you asked about a curb. You can get away with a really low curb on an asphalt shingle roof. On a metal roof, we will have to build it up a little bit. So from my client's perspective, she would prefer the dormer to the skylight from an aesthetic standpoint, from the feature of the house, to have it be what she would desire. So that's where we are. I do have a picture of one I found with a green roof, if anybody's curious to know what the skylight would look like in a green roof, on my iPad. I can Vanna White it, or we can just keep going.
Let's see where that goes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Are there any citizens wish to comment on this application? Hearing none. And Amanda, one question. Is this smaller than the first? Did I understand that right?
Yes,
smaller
sir.
Than the first submittal?
Yes, we, I think, proposed larger windows in the first one, and then this has gotten smaller by
Okay.
moving to a casement style window.
I just want to make sure. All right. Commission?
Mr. Chair,
Motion.
I move to deny issuance of a C of A for the proposed dormer construction based on staff analysis and recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
So I have several questions. One would be, you're talking about the black flashing of a skylight. Can it not be painted the same color as the roof?
Can I Vanna White it now? You want to see it? It's
Well-
actually got some rubber to it, not just the flashing of the metal around it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Could you stay at the mic? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I like to walk when I talk, so that's gonna be a problem constantly. You guys know that about me. So it's actually got some rubber flashing components to it, not just the metal flashing components. I would imagine the metal could perhaps be painted, the rubber could not.
Another question I have in regards to this, of course, a very low pyramid roof. What is the headspace in the bedroom?
You can walk in it now. You can get a fair amount in before you hit the side walls. It has 2 twin beds up there now. The ceiling height is not incredibly tall because of how it's open. It's a little deceiving. The dormer would help a little bit with that. That's why originally we proposed a bigger dormer, is to get a little bit more head height in there. But I think at this point, we're happier with the smaller scale. It's not as much as getting some head height in there as it is just to have a means of egress. The stairs go up in the living room along that right side of the wall and turn up, and it's open a little bit there. So you've got all the head height through the middle. It's just a really small, modest bedroom up in the center. You can see.
Any way to do the skylight on kind of the back side of that? Because the one reason I say that, if a child is in that area and could get out onto that roof, they could be onto the lower roof quickly and then out. It would be a safer situation.
And I did add a roof plan. We did not have that the last time we spoke to you. There is not a lot of room. It's only a couple of feet between the pyramid top and that roof below. That roof below comes in really high. That's actually a double height space in the interior of the portion. And so that is completely open to the rear of the house. So I don't think there's enough room for us to get a skylight in that area that would meet egress.
So do you know that? So you don't think
I'm 100% sure, just because of how the shape of you can see the shape of that second floor. That rear wall is coming in like almost where that ceiling height is coming. So we can't actually get we're not able to get the dormer on the addition part of the roof because all of that second floor lives on the inside of the pyramid, and there's just not enough space there. It's a really modest room.
I can imagine. It is a very low-pitched roof.
It is. It is.
All
I
right,
have
other
a
comments? Ms.
question.
Besser?
What is the actual headroom of the second floor?
That's a great question. I can stand in it. I'm 5'2", and I was not. It vaults to the pyramid, so it vaults to the pyramid and then slopes down to 4.5 feet on the outside walls.
So it does meet codes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
All right.
It does. Besides, it doesn't meet egress. And my client didn't put it in there. It's already in there. But besides the fact that there's no egress window, it does have the percentage to meet code from the ceiling height standpoint because they vaulted it to the peak.
Other questions? Ready to vote? We got a motion 10 to deny. Then let's do this. Raise your hand. All in favor of the motion to deny, please raise your hand. All opposed? Lone Ranger. Okay.
So we're denied with the dormers. If we come back with the skylights, will we come back before you all again? Okay.
Yeah, lucky you.
Woohoo! That's okay. I'm always here.
Mr. McCreary, is the egress driven by any sort of requirement from the city, or is it a desire of the applicant to do that?
It is an existing bedroom as it is, and there's no egress window. The city has not requested that. I walked in as an architect and was having a hard time with it.
I understand.
My assumption is whoever put that bedroom in there before my client owned the property most likely didn't get a permit or it would have never been approved.
Okay.
That is my assumption.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
So we're trying to find a solution.
Okay, you're
Thank you,
still
guys.
up. Item number 7. Consideration of alterations, window repair and replacement at 238 Public Square. Back for staff comment.
Okay, back to other Amanda, and then I'll turn it back over to this Amanda. The applicant is here to represent this item. It too was deferred from the August meeting to allow her to attend the meeting to be able to represent the item. So the applicant is proposing to address 10 upper story windows at the subject property, which is 238 Public Square. This diagram kind of shows where that is where City Hall is located here. It's directly across from Public Square. The guidelines recommend that one preserve original windows, their opening dimensions, and their detailing, and that if replacement windows are required or determined to be required by the Historic Zoning Commission, that replacement windows match the historic materials found on the building and be appropriate to the period of that building, with distinct meeting rails with an operable appearance. Wood or anodized aluminum may be appropriate for replacement windows. What you see in this particular building is that the historic material is wood, so that would be what would be recommended for any replacement. So on the front facade, you see this faces Public Square. There are 4 windows here. The applicant survey indicates that they're all non-original, with notes that most of the wood is straight or stock and with clear trim profiles, not detailed trim profiles, and non-historic glass. Water infiltration is present according to the applicant, and so she is seeking to replace all the windows and to repair the exterior trim to replace in kind if damaged beyond repair. So one question I did want to ask is that the applicant clarifies in the materials 3 windows, but there are 4, so I want to make sure that, is it all 4 that are requested for replacement?
It is, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I just want to make sure. Okay, moving on to the side elevation. The applicant has numbered them 1 to 6, moving away from the square. There are 6 windows. The applicant indicates that 1 through 5 all have bottom sashes that have been replaced, that have no historic glass present in those bottom sashes. And when I say bottom sash, for the clarification of everyone in the room, bottom sash means the bottom part of each window that is a double hung unit. This is considered an upper sash. This is considered a bottom sash. The applicant seeking to replace, well, I'm sorry, I lost my spot here. There are notes about each window. The applicant did a very thorough job at providing notes about each window. So the notes on these windows is that number 1, the top sash has been reworked, but it does have original wavy glass. And as I mentioned, the bottom sash has been replaced. On number 2, the top sash has been removed, but the bottom rail, the rail being the material between the glasses, is original or may be original. The top portions of the sash have been replaced, and the top sash has wavy glass. On number 3, both sashes, bottom and top, have been replaced and feature plate glass, which is a non-historic glass. It's not tempered. Number 4, the weights are still present in the historic window. The top sash has been reworked, but it does have wavy glass, and the window has significant rot. Number 5, the weights have been removed. The top sash has been reworked, but the bottom rail may still be original. And the top sash is plate glass and significant deterioration. And number 6 is totally a modern replacement window, and that's pretty evident from views even outside of the building. Moving on to the rear. Oops. There is a single window on the rear that faces the alley. The survey indicates that the bottom sash has been replaced, that the weights have been removed, and that the top sash is there, but it has been reworked. The bottom rail has been replaced, and the top sash has wavy glass. The proposal is to repair this window, to keep it in place and repair it. The proposed window replacement for all those proposed to be replaced is Marvin Wood Ultimate, which is a double hung window that has historic profile and dimension. With these being 2/2, meaning a single light over a single light, it's a lot easier to find a comparable replacement than if it had multi-lights. But I do have some personal experience with this window, and I know it is a great replacement window if replacement is required. Again, a historic window is always preferable to a non-historic replacement window. So with this, the applicant's request is to replace all the windows with the exception of this rear, which is to repair. And staff's recommendation would be to approve select window repair and replacement as follows. That on the front, that those windows be approved for replacement based on the survey provided by the applicant. On the side, it is recommended that the side facade windows number 2 through 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, be replaced.
1 through 5 be replaced, right?
No.
Two through
It'd be
five.
2 through 6, excuse me.
Okay,
I guess
okay,
I
okay.
left off 6
I got
because
you,
it's a
okay.
total modern window. So that 2 through 5 be replaced and 6 be replaced because it is a modern window. That number 1, based on the applicant's survey, be repaired. And that on the rear, that staff supports the applicant's request to repair that window. So of all windows, 6, 4, and 1, the 4 on the front, staff supports being replaced. On the side, staff supports replacing 2 through 6, repairing number 1. And then on the back, supports applicant's request to repair. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. McCrary.
So we talked about this in the DRC meeting that was in July. We did go back and study the windows more, took some more window pictures and details. I also met with 2 people. Missy Dean has been in the window industry for years. She is very well knowledgeable about windows, and we met out and discussed the windows. And we also met with Jeremy Lee, Lee Restoration. I know you guys are very familiar with Michael. So Jeremy has done countless replacement and repairs in town. He is always my guy when we are repairing windows because he just has so much knowledge. So when we walked through the project with both of them, I know one of the considerations from last time was on these side windows in particular, because the top does have the wavy glass, can we keep the top and do a new bottom sash? That is not feasible from my understanding. Jeremy was going to make it tonight, but he had an emergency he had to attend to. So what has happened actually, and it's very interesting, you can see it in some of the photos. So the only piece that's original on these windows on the side is the top sash is original, and some of them is the wavy glass, and the bottom rail of the top sash. They actually cut it at an angle and replaced all of the arch pieces. So that bottom sash is the only wood part that's original. So now that wood part has deteriorated. And so in order, because it's already in 2 pieces, it is my understanding that in order to get it to make the top operable and keep it historic and do a new bottom sash on the inside, it's either going to be not desirable and we will have sash liners or the sash packs, or they won't fit in the same pocket, or we would have to completely fake it and the windows will no longer be operable. So when they did the walkthrough and we went with each window, it was in their professional opinions that they be replaced. The Marvin windows will be custom because of the arch top. So we can continue to have the arch top windows at these locations, and they would be full wood windows. So you can see from the pictures and the survey the detailing for each of those windows.
Okay. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on this application? If not, we're ready for a motion, and we can either make it all in one motion, or we can break it into facades or by replacement and repair. So, however the commission would like to do this. Simple is always good. So is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Franklin Zoning Commission approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the select window repair and replacement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Susan. Discussion.
So I do have a few questions. And
Hit
one
me.
has to do, can you show me a picture that you said where they've been kind of slashed and put back together. Where would I find that in your survey?
Let's go through. Yeah, check 2. Oh,
And
wait,
that's-
wait, yeah, I think it was,
Specifically to the arched windows.
yes, I think, it's really hard to see. I'm gonna get closer, because I have glasses, but I don't have that good glasses. You can kind of see a piece of it there. It goes whoosh, right there.
Which page would that be?
That's page 7. It happens on all of them. And you can see it on the interior. Yeah.
You can talk.
That's a good one that you can see. No, scroll in. Maybe the next one. So, Brian, if you look on page 10, this is going to be your best page that you can see it. Look on page 10. Can they see your mouse? Yeah. So you can see it on the outside. See where that paint is chipping at a diagonal right above my red line where I'm saying the bottom. And then you can see it on the other side right below the red line. See that angle? That's the scarf angle that they use, that bottom sash, that bottom rail is the only piece that's historic. So you can see it on the inside too. It's very faint because it's all painted white, but it's those diagonal marks. The one on the left side of that upper right window is right above, on the left side above the red line, and on the right side it's right below the red line.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time following you with your photographs. Let's address some of those windows that we're seeing in the photograph. So I noticed there's some paint that's peeling. Does that appear to be lead paint to you?
I would not know the answer to that. It could possibly be, given the age of the windows. I would assume so.
So those are older than the 1990s, you think?
On the
Because I think it says in the survey that those may have been replaced some in the 1990s.
on the side windows,
On the west side?
it's pieces of them have been replaced, but the trim work hasn't. Like some of the brick molds and stuff has not.
If you were to replace the windows, you say these are custom-made windows?
They will be.
Will they fit the actual window opening?
Yes.
Or will the window opening be made to fit the window?
They will fit the window opening. They will be made to fit the windows, to fit the brick masonry opening.
I'm always reluctant to do window replacement.
I
Because the
understand.
guidelines actually say original windows and openings should be preserved and maintained.
I understand.
You mentioned in the survey too, it gives so many percentages of originality per windows on the west side. How did you arrive at those percentages?
That's when I was walking through with Jeremy Lee and Missy Dean, and they were pointing out the pieces of the window that they felt, using their knowledge, was the original components to the window, whereas like this one, the bottom rail of the top sash was original, and they were pointing out some different detail work, mostly because it's straight stock. So from the inside, you'll see the OG or the putty glaze, but on the top half, it just looks like one by straight stock of where it's been replaced. So at some point in time, that's why the brick mold is still the trim work. So when you look at it from the inside, they had taken those sashes off, repaired the pieces that were probably deteriorated at that time, and then put it back. And then I would assume some of them, either the glass broke in the process or the glass was bad because all the glass had been replaced on those bottom sashes.
And just curiosity, I want to ask you about Miss Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Is she a historic window expert, or does she work in the?
She does our new windows.
She does your
but
new windows.
She does, but she has been in the window industry for 20 years and has seen it all.
But she's not a historic window
No,
expert.
Jeremy is my historic. So I had met with both of them to go through with anything custom. I always work with Missy. So if we did a custom piece for this, can this still work? And met with both of them to make sure that we attacked it from all the fronts.
And just for the record, Jeremy Is he related to Michael?
He is. He's Michael Lee's son.
Okay.
And he's the one that physically does all the work to all the historic windows that we work with,
All right, thank you.
his team.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment. I'd like to propose that the shop drawings for the custom windows be provided to staff for
Excellent
review. To quantify that the opening is being maintained.
Excellent idea.
I think that's a condition,
We typically do that too.
it's not on here. It's supposed to be. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Wait a minute, we got a motion. Is there a second to that motion that Ken made
I'll
on the
second that.
amendment?
Second.
Josh, okay. All right, Mary.
my question is, that I think there were 2 windows that still had the old wavy glass beside the one you're gonna repair. Is it possible for those to be repaired? I just hate to see us lose the old glass before we have to. It adds so much character in so many ways.
I understand that. And that was part of the consideration when I walked through with Jeremy and we were looking at it very carefully. This is based off of his recommendations and his experiences of what is feasible and what is very difficult. There is some concern on some of these because they are in such difficult shape that coming out would lose parts of it anyway.
And Mr. Chair, I just have another comment to make,
Sure.
because, you know, I've kind of walked in front of that building and just observed it. And of course, I can't, you know, I haven't been in it. And what I observed from the exterior is it looks like all except, and I agree with you on the 6th window.
Oh,
That's
it's
definitely
definitely
a
new.
replacement. That the arch sashes appear to be original, and they match the windows on the first floor in the arch and the profile, and you know, they appear to be original. And traditionally, they would be probably fixed in this type of situation because they have the arch and only the lower sash would be operable. Would there be a way to actually repair and keep and repair the upper sashes and replace your lower sashes? And Ms. Pierce mentioned a couple of windows, and I think they may be on the front, that 2 may be original. The way
None
they-
on the front are original. And
Some
there's
of the-
no wavy glass on the front.
Well, some of the stops and the actual profile I've seen in late 19th century homes here in Franklin as windows. So what I was thinking, if you could take some of those and put them as the bottom sashes, then you could, then the ones you had to replace the bottom sash, you could have custom made.
So from what I understand, when we're trying to do that with these windows, it was in Jeremy's his historical work on windows, these particular windows, it would be very difficult to do that and get the gap correct on the new bottom windows to have them be operable without it sticking out, given what kind of situation they are in.
And I feel like in this particular situation, operable is, I mean, it's always preferred, but I've never seen a business window open on
I
Main
understand.
Street.
And I must say, custom windows can be custom made to fit the application. I mean, I don't understand how if there would be a gap when you could actually, it's wood, you can make it bigger, smaller.
I think it partly has to do with the track system, and I think also it would be, I guess the consideration going in is that if we are making new sashes for the bottom and we are trying to fit that existing opening, we're probably looking at plate glass for that as opposed to insulated glass. Or we would have to use a very thin insulated glass, because the moment you add the insulated glass, your sash is actually a little bit thicker than what a historic. So I think that's probably where some of that is coming from. So if we do look at reworking and putting in new bottom sashes, then we will be looking from an energy, the big goal here is to also help with the energy and the heat gain that we have going on in that. So I
That was
think
the
that's,
prime driver,
that
as I
was the
recall.
driver of what started all of this. So
Right.
And our guidelines speak against making window changes to original based on energy costs.
I
Because you can-
understand.
You can add a storm window to the inside or the exterior. as well as you mentioned, you can get a thin insulated glass that will fit historic windows. It's done routinely.
I understand.
So we have a motion.
We got a motion
amended.
for an amendment and a second for that. So that shop drawings for the custom windows be provided to staff for approval to assure window openings are maintained. Is there any more discussion on that amendment? Then, all in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're back to the main motion then to approve as amended. Are there any other comments on that?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment. I move to amend the motion to keep and repair the arch-top window sashes located on the west side of the building designated as 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 on the applicant's survey and replace any bottom sashes determined to be modern replacement windows.
And I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
All right, say it again. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Replace what now?
It's the very, it's the bottom one. Mary, if you
Yeah.
want to pass that to.
Pass that to me.
Here it is.
Move to amend the motion to keep and repair the arched top window sashes located on the west side of the building designated as numbers 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 on the survey and replace any bottom sashes determined to be a modern replacement window. Is that clear to you, Amanda?
Yes.
Okay, and Mary seconded that motion.
Can you reread that, please, for staff?
Pardon me?
Can you reread it for me?
Yeah, and I'm gonna give it to you, too. Move to amend the motion to keep and repair the arched top window sashes located on the west side of the building designated as numbers 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 on the applicant's survey and replace any bottom sashes determined to be a modern replacement window.
So just for clarification, is it the commissioner who's making this amendments, understanding that that would mean that a lot of the bottom ones would be replaced?
If they're determined to be replaced, have been previously replaced.
Okay.
If it's shown at the time that they are original windows, they'd be repaired and maintained.
Okay. Because I just want to be, I just want to understand your intent, you know, if there were any that you're comfortable, based on that recommendation, having to stay, that's clear for the record as opposed to replaced.
Was it clear?
I'm going to ask Amanda this question. What are the logistics or the issues in doing what this amendment says?
I think from the most part, it's going to be making sure we get that glass right on the bottom sash. None of the bottom sashes have wavy glass. They're all new. So I understand what Ryan's
So
asking
you don't see it being
for.
a big problem in execution, if that's,
Not from my end.
Oh, okay.
But if we have a problem, I'll come back and with Jeremy.
always glad to see you. Okay,
So
okay.
no.
I got you. All right.
I'm assuming Marvin won't take components and integrate them in a new window.
No, we asked.
And
we
actually-
we tried to
I
push
actu-
that.
I actually called and asked that too, just for the record. That's
Yeah.
not something
There
that.
Actually-
are some companies that I think do this sort of work in Nashville.
And that is not the intent, to actually do a hybrid window between Marvin and the original windows. Building a window sash is fairly simple. Any of the lumber mill companies around here can build those custom.
And I think that's what we would be looking at for those
I'm not
windows, not a
suggesting
Marvin
that
pack.
Marvin
Yes, yes.
Okay, we've got a motion then and two amendments, and let's vote on this second amendment. Any more discussion on the second amendment? I'd be glad to read it again if anybody needs that. Then all in favor of the second amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Then we're back to the main motion. Is there anything else on the main motion as amended twice? Then, if not,
So
all in favor?
I want to clarify really quickly. This means that as the motion is amended twice and made, the 4 windows on the front would be replaced.
Yes.
The one on the rear would be repaired. And then the one, number 6 on the side would be replaced. And then on 1 through 5, you would repair all the top sashes. And the bottoms would be repaired and maintained if determined to be original, otherwise replaced. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, all in favor of the motion then as amended twice, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Mr. Chair, could I request a intermission?
What?
A break?
Excuse myself for a
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, we have an intermission request.
Do what?
We have an
have a break.
intermission request.
Intermission
A recess.
request. We would like to take an adjournment for 5 minutes, a recess for 5 minutes. So we need to vote on, all right, folks, hey. We need a motion to recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Mary motioned and Ken seconded.
Yes, yes.
All in favor, stand and recess. There we go. Okay, we're back now, ready for item number 8, consideration of new construction at 173 Splendor Ridge Drive. Chad Gore, Mike Ford Builders.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction.
Get a
of
little closer.
Yes.
Thanks.
Of a principal structure with attached accessory at Lot 13 in the Splendor Ridge subdivision. This item appeared before the DRC at the August 16th meeting. And as a reminder, the Historic Zoning Commission considered the Splendor Ridge subdivision for issuance of a preliminary COA at its April 2018 meeting prior to the development's approval, so as to provide approved direction to the final owners on pivotal building design elements such as height, setback, scale, and massing. So the applicant is proposing the construction of a 2-story cross-gabled house with colonial revival elements. A sunroom is located to the right of the entrance, and then atop the sunroom is a porch. A 2-bay garage is attached to this structure, recessed approximately 35 feet from the front facade. The proposed scale of 2 stories is appropriate for Splendor Ridge in the Franklin Road Historic District and is consistent with the development's preliminary COA. The guidelines do recommend that in areas where historic garages are generally detached, new garages should appear to be detached, but that attached garages should be designed in such a way that they are located at traditional locations behind the rear plane of the main form of the house or otherwise not visible from the street. The applicant is proposing to attach the 1.5-story garage form at the right side of the principal structure, approximately 35 feet 10 inches from the front facade. The form is less traditional in appearance and therefore less consistent with the intent of the guidelines. The materials of the proposed new construction are listed as brick, fiber cement siding, 5 4x4 surrounds around windows and doors in the siding, 5-pond balustrades, brick foundation and chimney, and asphalt shingle roofing, which are consistent with the guidelines. The zoning ordinance requires material changes to coincide with form or massing changes. The left and right side elevations have a portion of the 2nd story with lap siding, while the lower portion has brick, and therefore there does not appear to be a change in form or massing in these locations. So the material should change to brick.
Victoria, just a second. Can you just explain that one more time so that I can point it out?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the zoning ordinance requires material changes to coincide with form or massing changes. And what Amanda is showing on the screen now, you can see that there is lap siding on the top while there's brick on the bottom. And it doesn't appear that there is a change in form or massing in these locations. Is that okay?
Yes.
Finally, the application does not meet the guidelines in regards to proposed building coverage at 39.9%. Therefore, it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission deny the proposed new construction. However, if issued a COA, the windows must have historic profile and dimension and consist of either wood or a composite material with the appearance of wood. And the window specifications must be approved by the preservation planner prior to the issuance of a building permit. If issued a COA, the awning that is above the side porch door should be removed, and the lap siding on the 2nd story should be changed to brick, or the applicant must utilize a slight change in building form to justify the material change. And then finally, the application must meet the requirements of building and neighborhood services. Thank you.
Thank you. With the applicant.
Hello.
Welcome. We're back.
Yes, thank you for your time tonight. I have a few comments based on staff's recommendations I'll just take them as, in the order they come. The building coverage is something we've talked about before. I have included, at the request of the DRC, some illustrations that have been included on prior approved submittals. I can point to those. Yeah, thank you. This is just showing the entire development and illustrates the open space, permanent open space that's included with the development, and calculates that with the, in consideration of the entire open space around the development, if we were to build out all of these lots to a 40% coverage, there would be only 13% of building coverage over the entire site. When we have committed to staying below 40% coverage on each of the individual lots, and that's, this is the same illustration we've had on several other previously approved applications, and I hope that you'll consider it the same way on this one. Number two, the placement of the garage. Most of the previous applications in this community have pretty much the same building footprint, and therefore, you know, limited variations in massing on the rest of the building. This application and one previous to it on Lot 5 have almost the same massing, and the garage is pulled forward a little bit farther, and we worked through some changes to that massing on the previous application for Lot 5, and after some modifications, you guys did approve that one. This application matches the roof massing and building massing that went along with that previously approved application, if that makes any sense to put it that way. There are modifications to the, you know, the front, immaterial modifications that don't change the massing of the building itself, that hopefully, in your eyes, will show that garage massing to be detached enough in appearance so that it is approvable. We're fine with number 3 in terms of the comments. Number 4, awning should be removed over the side door. Not a deal killer for me, but it does help us a lot in waterproofing that door if we can cover it. So I'd like you to consider making an exception for that. Number 5, lap siding and brick. Again, not a deal killer for me. I'd tell you, though, that we've had that successfully approved by zoning in the past. I see the roof changing, the change in the roof shape as a change in massing, and therefore an appropriate place to change materials. And I think especially on the left elevation, it helps to break up what would otherwise be a large mass of brick. Those are the 4 things I've put before you. If there's any other specific questions about the application, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on this application? Hearing none, we need a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, in absence of another motion, I'll make a motion.
Okay?
I move to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed new lot at Lot 13 based on staff analysis and recommendations dated September 13, 2021.
Our staff's approving, or recommending denial.
Okay, well, okay. Just appropriate for proposed new lot, construction at Lot 13.
Okay, and you would make that motion to approve going against the staff recommendation?
Right, because it's consistent with what we have approved at this location previously.
Thank you.
And before a second, I can offer to clarify, to make anything any easier, you can pick and choose the different conditions that you intend in your recommendation or not, if that helps. That's why we number them.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brian. All right, discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, it's recommended to not incorporate any of the staff comments? Is that the motion?
No, it's recommended to,
Approve.
with the staff comments, other than you're approving, but with all these other comments.
Minus the proposed building coverage.
So all
Okay.
but number one, correct?
Correct.
And number 2.
Okay. And there was another one that was.
The garage.
To do with the garage.
Okay.
So are you also excluding that staff recommendation?
No.
Okay.
So can somebody just state what the conditions are on
All
the
right, yeah, I
approval
will.
specifically?
All right, yes, the conditions would be, the windows must have a historic profile and dimension and consist, they're 3 through 6
Okay.
is what my interpretation is. I think that's correct, Mr. Scalf.
Yes, sir.
And 1 and 2, he is approving.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, has everybody got that?
Mr. Chair,
All
I
right,
have
are
a,
there any comments, Ms. Besser?
I'm not in favor of the motion. I've been consistently opposing this because of the pushing that 35% rule. So, and I have to say, what you're bringing forward are excellent designs. So it's not that I'm disapproving of the design, it's just the coverage that I have a problem with.
Thank you, well stated. Comments?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the applicant.
All
So
right.
regarding the awning, so where we're seeing the right elevation, can you tell me, is that north, south, east, or west?
West. Makes it worse.
That's west.
Mr. Chair, the other elevation where the piece of wood was, or the wood part on the opposite elevation,
East elevation.
yes, I do agree that it needs to, that I do agree with staff comments that it be brick, but, well, that's, no.
It's on both elevations, Ms. Pierce.
I know, but the other one has solid brick wall
Scroll.
below it. Do we allow that much expanse of brick with no break? I'm asking, generally, as a code in this Franklin.
There isn't a requirement
Okay.
that brick be broken up.
Okay,
It's really more about the changing of materials and
Yeah,
when that
okay.
is appropriate.
that was my question.
And as far as the guidelines go to that effect, the guidelines would recommend that, fenestration being your window and door rhythm, spacing of openings be consistent historically, what you'd see typically. So changing that either side to brick where it is siding right now would not be something out of keeping with the guidelines. It would be more about ensuring that there are large expanses of facade, whether it's sided or brick, that have no, consistent with window pattern with what you see historically.
And I have a question for the applicant. Right now, you're showing a brick roll-lock at the second floor level, so I'm assuming there is a little, probably the depth of the masonry plane change.
That's right,
from the
3
brick
inches.
to the siding, and I guess what we need to determine is, should that entire thing be siding and you have the 2 forms on
That's-
either side of the
That
siding?
was where I was going.
Or should it be brick all the way
That's-
up? And
That
I
would be
think-
my question.
Yeah.
If it helps, what you're describing is something we have done on other applications and successfully. I don't know if it matters to you guys to mix it up a little bit up and down the street, but that is something.
All right, somebody want to make an amendment then? If so, let's state it.
Ken?
Well, staff's recommendation is that it be changed to brick in lieu of the brick being changed to siding, so I guess we would have to make an amendment. So I would propose that amendment that would require the area between the 2 forms to be siding down to the water table. Does that make sense?
I would second that.
Okay.
And is this just
This
on
is
the
on the east elevation. Right.
Well, actually, I think it's on both. Yeah.
Is it on both?
Yes.
Can we see it on the west again?
Oh,
That would be
okay. Got it,
consistent
got
with
it,
what
got
we,
it. It was,
and that would be consistent with what we did, I believe, on Lot 5.
But your base would be consistent and the water table would be the transition.
And what Mr. Skelf pointed out, it would give a break dimensionally down through that side, each side.
require siding to the water table level in the portion now showing siding. Okay, everybody understand that? On the east and west elevation, require siding to the water table level in the portion now showing siding. All right, is there a second to that amendment?
I second it.
Who did? Oh, Kathy, I'm sorry. All right, other conversation on that
Yes,
item?
Mr. Chair, could the brick selection come back to staff for approval?
If you-
The brick is always submitted to staff. for
Okay,
approval.
good, okay.
All right, any other comments? Let's have a vote here. Any other comments on that amendment proposal? All in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, are there any other comments on the motion as amended? If not, you're ready to vote. All right, all in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All right, looks like 6-1. Ms. Besser's voting no. So, motion approved 6-1 as amended.
Thank you.
All right, we're now ready for item 9. This one this is consideration of alterations principal at 724 Fair Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a series of alterations at this property, 724 Fair Street. The applicant did appear before the DRC to discuss this proposal at the August meeting. So there are a number of alterations. As proposed, rather than read through all of them, I'll generally summarize them and then focus on the recommendation, which is pretty clear as far as each particular item. So the proposal is to alter the front facade through the replacement of a number of windows, including those on the front elevation of the original brick structure, and to change those out to double hung of a 6/6 light pattern. I believe the applicant's request for that is because these are 1/1 windows, which aren't typical of a federal style home. The applicant's also requesting to add shutters that are in keeping with the federal style of the original portion of this structure. Historic photograph provided to the DRC indicated that shutters were present on the rear elevation of the original structure at a point in time. The shutters are recommended to be wood, appear operable to fit the size of their openings. The applicant's proposing to adjust the window opening at the front elevation of the circa 1920 portion of the structure in order to match the rhythm and spacing of the adjacent window. So you can see on the screen here, and I'll zoom in, that this window is slightly smaller and not quite matching the rhythm of what's around it. The applicant is also proposing to replace the existing glass doors at the front entry with solid wood doors and to add divisions to the existing side lights on either side here. The applicant is proposing to remove and reconstruct the front porch due to some water issues, and that new columns are proposed to replace the existing as they are not original. The porch rack is proposed to be altered with the porch being rebuilt so that it would be taller rest taller on the building. That would allow for shutters to be added to the lower floor. And moving on to the rear elevation. The applicant's proposing to reframe this roof line at the rear of the structure. You can see better here. I'm going to try to toggle so you can see both. To reframe this roof line to a different shape. To replace the windows on the upper level. To introduce new window openings at the rear of the structure on this circa 1967 portion of the building down here. To remove the bay window from this portion of the rear of the building. To replace the window opening at the stairwell location with a door. Oh, I'm sorry, to place a window at the stairwell location. You can see it here. Okay, and then the construction of a rear deck behind this circa 1960 portion of the building. Okay, now moving on to the right side. Wherever it went. There it is. Okay. The applicant's proposing to change the window and door pattern on this circa 1967 portion of the building. You can see here what's current, and here's what's proposed. On the left side, the proposal is to replace an upper level door, you can see right here, with a window due to the alterations limited visibility. And overall alterations proposed to the entirety of the building will be to clean and repoint the masonry. And with wood, there's a number of areas on the building that have wood siding. The applicant's proposing to replace the wood siding where determined to be needed. So I will jump to the recommendations because I believe I'm comprehensive in the recommendation, but I'm happy to elaborate further if requested. The overall recommendation is for the commission to approve the proposal with the following conditions. The condition being I left out the roofing. One overall request was to change the roofing throughout to a metal. So the recommendation to the commission would be that in accordance with the guidelines, replacement of the shingle roof with a metal roof is not recommended unless historical documentation suggests that the metal is an original material. So that condition would be that the applicant provide some documentation to show that it was in fact metal. If not, it should remain shingle on the portions that are currently shingle. As for the entrance, the recommendation is that the applicant provided information about the door and the surround. The guidelines recommend that original entrance elements such as doors and transoms, side lights, and those associated surrounds be preserved and maintained. The existing entrance elements do appear to be historic, but it's not clear if they're original, so it would be recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission make a determination on the age, whether it's original to the house or non-original, but perhaps historic, and could make a consideration accordingly. I'll just be very candid, staff is not able to determine if it's original, but it is very much historic. As for the windows, it is recommended that any replacement windows be wood and have a historic profile and dimension, that all those specifications be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to work commencing, that in accordance with that, shutters be wood, appear operable, and be sized to fit their respective openings, and those specifications must also be submitted to staff for approval as well. The adjustment of the window opening on this 1920 portion of the building in order to match the rhythm and spacing of the adjacent window is not in keeping with the recommendations of the design guidelines because The recommendation is to preserve and maintain historic window openings. So unless historic documentation suggests that this window opening has been altered from its original state, the rhythm and spacing of this section of the structure, though asymmetrical, should be preserved for its historic and unique character. Further, there are several notes on the plan set that indicate that there are alterations to the window configuration that could change in accordance with interior layout. Any such alteration must be submitted to either staff, or if staff defers or refers it to the Historic Zoning Commission for review and approval. The plan set that we see should be the plan set that's built out, so any alterations to that must be resubmitted for consideration. For the wood replacement, in accordance with the guidelines, replacement should be limited to only severely deteriorated areas, with no more than 25% of any one facade being replaced. And that's in order to try to maintain as much of the historic material, historic fabric as possible. The siding replacement plan would be something that the applicant must submit to staff for review and approval prior to that work commencing. The expectation being that the limitation be to severely damaged only, not cumulative 25% on each side unless that's the extent of the deteriorated amount. Any such request for more than 25% would be something that the staff would ask the applicant to bring back to the Historic Zoning Commission, because then you're getting outside of the intent of the guidelines. Thank you very much.
All right, would the applicant like to comment on the application?
Of course I would.
Who's
Hi,
asking?
Kevin Coffey. Good to see you guys again. So I'm just going to comment on a few of the staff comments. I'm going to start basically with the front door issue, and I know in the design review meeting, we talked about that pretty extensively. We're 99% sure that that's not the original door. It's got different hardware on it than you would see in Federal Style, so we know it's not that, and our thought is that it may have been replaced in the 1920s when they did that addition on the right. I don't know that, and it might be a little bit older than that. There have obviously been subsequent remodels and window changes. We do have a photograph from the 1940s, I think it's 1948, that already shows the front windows modified. The addition is obviously on the right side. The porch was already done with the little skinny columns. The original windows in the main portion of the house had been taken out, and they were framed in to make smaller openings. We know with 95% certainty that happened at some point. If you look at pictures of Federal Style houses, just in general, it is very rare to see full glass front doors, glass side lights without some mullion definition to them. You might find an example here and there that didn't have that. So really what our approach is basically just leaving the whole frame around the door with all of the vintage, the millwork that's there, just replacing the side light itself and then doing a solid door. I think, Amanda, were there pictures included of examples of, you probably don't really even need to see these because you've seen it so often. Okay, we have several pictures of, and you guys all know where these places are, but just down the street on Fair Street, obviously there's an example of the solid door with the side lights with the moles in them, and then the transom is almost identical to this. They typically either go all the way across or they have just the little square on each side. But just to walk through Franklin, you'll see 8 or 9 examples of it. So that's really our approach on the front door. So what I would say about that is obviously we're making some moves to try to bring this back to its federal roots. And to me, doing that includes that front door. So that's kind of what I would say about that issue. So while changing the porch to make it more proportional with better proportional columns, adding the shutters, leaving the arrangement of the windows and just replacing to the original window size, I think that's all in keeping with bringing back the federal style of the main portion of the house. So that would be my comment about the front doors. The window, the smaller window on the right addition, I mean, I don't think that's a hill we're gonna die on or anything. What we could do with that is a little bit of forensics on the inside. We could look to see if there was an original frame that was slightly bigger, that maybe had been modified at one time, and if we go in there and we see that that's not there, we'll just keep it the size that it is. So I don't think a lot of people really even notice the distinction. Aaron, the owner's son, also said that he thought it was the same size when he went over there, so it's potentially, we might have mismeasured it. So I don't think we're really too concerned with that issue. When it comes to windows, and I know there's been quite a bit of talk about windows tonight, so I'll go ahead and bring it up. I really feel like we would probably replace these with a shop-built window. And kind of my go-to for that is James Dunn at Vintage Millwork, because he knows more than all of us put together about this stuff. So I would defer to that about moldings. He's got all of the cutting knives, everything to make anything. So that would be my goal, is to use a shop-built window that somebody like Vintage makes. And to go to the full masonry opening like we talked about in the other meeting. The roofing question is interesting, is that, so none of the roofing on the house, obviously none of the roofing is original. To me, roofing is a thing that is used to unify a structure even with disparate elements. And I think that the hierarchy of the elements on this is strong enough to carry the day without worrying about whether the roofing changes. And if the roofing needs to be replaced, to me, it makes a lot of sense to make the roofing uniform. And they want to do that. They want to do a new metal roof on the whole thing, and I think that makes sense to do the whole thing, because tons of houses through the years have disparate elements, and when they go re-roof them, they re-roof it all in the same material. So I don't think that's a far stretch to go ahead and do that in the metal. If it's shingle, we have to re-roof it anyway. And I do want to point out, well, I really think that that's pretty much the only issues, but I'll definitely take questions.
Okay, and are there any citizens which comment on the application? All right, need a motion then from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the proposal.
With staff comments.
With staff's comments? No.
Let's leave it at this for now.
All right, well, that's fine. We approve. Okay. Mary, you seconding?
I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, questions now.
Okay.
You want to do this in pieces, like the front elevation, and just do the doors and or the roof? Start with the roof. Any questions about the roof?
Well, the staff has said if there isn't evidence of a metal roof, don't do it, correct? So
I can clarify. I didn't mean to misspeak, and Mr. Coffey pointed out, and I want to clarify. I understand that there's not a bit of historic roofing material on this house, and that was not my intent at all. It was more about what material was there historically and not. Mr. Coffey's comments are well taken. Colonial Revival in this community tends to have more shingle roofing than metal roofing, and it seemed to me that it was the applicant's intent at the design review to try to restore that 1960s era portion of the building to more of the colonial roots it had. So I felt that, if it had shingle historically, that would help, define that style, and it would be more in keeping with the intent of the guidelines.
On the,
You said 1960s, do you mean the 1920s edition?
Or 1920, excuse me, that's what I meant.
So-
There's a 60s edition on the
All
rear.
right,
Thank you.
wait a minute. So, Kevin, as far as the roof goes, you're saying that if you can find some documentation that it was metal, you'd go metal? Is that what
Well, I
you're?
wasn't really saying that on the roof. I was really talking more about the window, if I
All
found
right, well,
documentation.
let's just
Yeah.
deal with a piece at a time here. Let's talk about the roof.
Well, I think it's the owner's intent.
Desire to do metal.
Desire to
I
do
got that.
metal on all of it, to unify it and have one material.
And Mr. Chair, I would support metal on the oldest portion of the house and shingles on the addition for the reason that it was built in pieces and to make it read in pieces. I don't see unifying as a goal in this particular circumstance, because you've got the old original house and then you've got that 20s addition.
however, I would support metal for the porch roof.
I would too.
Because it's a shallow pitch, which would not accommodate shingles.
And I would support, I don't want to go here, but somewhere in my brain, I worked on that roof at one time, and I can't remember if it was metal when we replaced it.
I mean, you climbed up there on the roof?
I really can't remember, and I don't know if you'll find a photograph.
On the porch
Not the
or the-
porch, the house roof.
The porch roof is metal and is
Right.
obviously old.
Right, but I'm talking, see how it's drawn with the metal roof?
Well, it has metal on it now.
The main portion?
Yes.
Okay,
Is
well,
the
I
main-
am for that.
Does the 1948 photograph show the roof on the main portion?
There's, every
Can't tell.
photograph you're gonna see has trees in front of it.
Is
You
there-
can't see it.
Is there any evidence as to what the roofing material was on the 1920s edition, being something different than shingle?
I don't have any photographic evidence of what it has ever been. I do know that it has an integral gutter system on it.
Those are
and
special.
You would find those, I've seen them with metal and with shingle roofs.
Shingles, yeah.
Actually, I've seen them more commonly with metal, now that you bring it up. And I'm trying to think of an example, but I think the house at the corner of Margin and Third, I think that's all metal, and it has kind of a similar, if I'm remembering right, it has a similar kind of integral gutter. I know because I took a picture of that front door, because it's, even though it's a little bit later example. But I don't have direct evidence that it was metal.
Okay.
Can you tell us on the metal roof, is it standing seam?
Yes.
Is it turned, where you have turned metal that goes in short sections up, or is it one long panel?
I think long panels. It's not a turned metal roof.
That would indicate a later, probably a later metal
Oh,
roof.
you mean the existing roof?
The existing.
Oh, I'm sure the existing roof is much newer. I mean, I don't have a vintage on it. I don't really have a way of knowing, but
From Google Maps, it could just be an illusion, but it almost appears as on the right side in that back section of the gable, going back, that it has asphalt shingles on that part.
on the addition, the 20s?
No,
addition?
actually on the main structure.
That I do not, I don't think I've looked at that, but I think the whole thing's metal.
I would support metal.
But even at that, I think metal's the correct material, definitely for
I
the main
agree.
part.
I agree.
And I would posit that metal's the correct material for the additions too, but that's, I understand if,
Or does somebody
Disagree
want
with
to
that.
make a motion that the roofing all be metal? I think that's the desire.
that's the owner's
That's the
desire,
ultimate.
definitely.
So does somebody want to make a motion that all roofing be metal? Or an
That's Mary's
amendment?
position?
If, I'm sorry, what?
No,
That was, Mr. Schaff said something.
I said, I don't think that was Mary's position.
no, that wasn't my position.
I know,
My
I know it
position-
wasn't. You do
Right.
asphalt shingles on
So
the addition.
someone else needs to
I
make a
understand.
different motion if they
But-
want to.
All right, I want to try to get this where we know what we're doing with the roof before we move on to something else. So if you want to do asphalt shingles on a portion and metal on the other, let's figure that out.
Let's do, so I have another question on that. Is there an L on this building at the rear that joins into the main house? Or is all that additions from a later
We haven't
period?
changed the footprint at all. The only roof that we're modifying is that back L portion that was done in the 60s, the one that has that little janky bay window on it. So if you pan up, so we made the roof on that piece symmetrical. There were a couple of issues there besides just the roof. There's a window on the upper level that actually cuts into the roof system and has a nasty leaking kind of flashing situation. And personally, I know the 60s edition is old now, but it's bad. So it's a bad edition, and it looks better the way we're doing it. So that's where we came up. That's the L portion in the back. There's a little shed portion on the upper level to the left there that's older, that has kind of an extended shed from the main roof. And if you go to the side elevation, Amanda, you can see that a little better, the right side. Well, both right and left side. You can see that shed roof on the top as well.
Mr. Chair, I would like to pose an amendment.
Fine, I'm
And-
looking for it.
Okay, so what we're seeing, so let's go back to the elevation, proposed rear elevation. And that one. So if you see the metal roof where that possibly could have been a porch that eventually was enclosed,
Right here?
over to the right, right there, I'm proposing that the applicant be allowed for that to be metal. And also the shed that comes off the main roof where you have the two windows separated. Can you move your cursor,
Yeah, there.
that part?
I'm sorry, I'm taking notes.
So those two sections, that I think that would harmonize with the structure and tell that story. But the other additions in shingle.
And I would second that.
Okay, the other addition, you mean existing addition?
Additions.
So as proposed, to the left, where we're
Yeah.
calling that, what, a 1948 edition?
20s.
On the left, on the far
20s?
left side.
1920s.
1920s, that have shingles, and also the very low-pitched gable.
Have shingles. Okay,
And the
so
rest be metal.
all except those two areas would have metal.
Yes.
Okay, let's see.
Amanda, do you have a roof plan in there?
I don't believe so.
And Mr. Coffey, how does that square with you?
The only thing I'm wondering about is, okay, the rear addition, and I should know this, but I need at least a 312 pitch on that.
You mean back here?
Yes.
I'm thinking that might need to be metal, Brian.
All right, that's
I
fine with me.
think it needs
All right,
to
so-
be metal
It's very low.
because of the low pitch, and
Okay,
I
so
think
we're
to
back
keep
to
the ceiling.
only addition, the existing addition on the left side would have shingles, everything else would have metal. Is that right? Is that your revised amendment motion, Brian?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And I have seconded
All right.
the
And can I ask you-
revised amendment.
And I have a question.
All right.
From a staff perspective, Ms. Rose, I want to just make sure this 1967 edition in the back, which is now, I've been sitting here counting, over 50 years old, is staff okay with this proposed modification?
That's a great question. I do consider the potential historicity of buildings as they age over time. With this being completely in the rear with no visibility from the street view, the guidelines would support alterations to roof lines. And so because of, even though it may be historic, because it's just not visible, I do think it would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm writing. All right. Any other comments on that amendment motion to make all portions of roof metal except for the existing addition on that left side as we view this drawing from the rear? All right. Then all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. That's the roofing. Let's go to the, what? That's right. Amazing. Amazing what we can do.
And, Mr. Chair, does the roofing material comes back to staff for approval? Is that correct?
They've asked for it to be standing seam, so I'm comfortable with that, so
Okay.
long as the commission is.
Okay, let's go to the front, let's go to the front elevation, Amanda. Let's talk about the favorite subject of windows. Comments on that? Comments on the windows? Brian? Fire.
This is going to be a dramatic change for that street for the best.
No question about it.
You're talking about a house that is the oldest house west of the original downtown plan of Franklin. 1920s. To replace these windows that have been replaced before with what's more like the original windows would have been is totally appropriate. And I must refer back to the 1989 historic zoning overlay vote. And in the paper, what is great, because they mention in the paper what the mission is. And they said it is to preserve, protect, and restore. And I think this is a perfect example of preserving, protecting, and restoring. So I think the plan is very appropriate and meets the intent of the guideline.
Okay. Other comments on the windows? Ms. Besser, you're looking like you're having a thought process here.
Oh, I'm saving it up for the door.
Okay, let's talk about the doors then. Go ahead.
I think what Mr. Coffey has proposed for the door is what I would support. Because I think if you're going to take a house and you're trying to restore it, that the doors, the solid doors with the pane side lights are what we would have had.
Right.
And it just seems to me that the doors are the first thing you see on a house. And it seems to me a shame to not do the doors and take them back to what our instincts tell us they would be, as opposed to a historic photograph, since we don't have that. So that's my comment.
All right, any other comments on the doors?
Well, generally, we sometimes support, or usually support change over time, but we've lost so many federal buildings in Franklin, and so for that reason, I would support the applicant on this.
Okay, I have a question.
All right.
I heard Ms. Rose's recommendation that the Historic Zoning Commission is to make a recommendation related to the age of the door. What do we believe the age of the door to be?
It's definitely a historic door. And, with this being such a unique building, it's not very typical to federal in any way, shape, or form right now. And I commend the applicant and his architect greatly in trying to take this on. Like Brian said, this is a treasure to the street. Look, it has some quirkiness, and I think that you can see that in some of the alterations to it over time. But like Ms. Besser said, a federal style door would not be what you would see on this building right now.
Yeah, I completely understand that. What I'm trying to gauge is what do we know? I know from the design review, I think we were thinking it could even be turn of the century. So are we thinking it's a 120-year-old door, or we don't know?
We don't know, but it's likely, like Mr. Coffey said, that it is of a 1920s vintage. That's why I wanted the commission to have this discussion. It is a historic door, but it's not likely the original door. The guidelines would recommend maintaining original, doors, surround, side lights, and so this is kind of a unique situation where it could be right to do either one. But what's more right for, the intent here, and I think that the applicant's intent is to try to restore to a period certain, and, based on the DRC comments, the period to which, certain elements of the building should be restored is different. This is not a federal period, it's more of a colonial period, and this is, more of a federal period. And so, I think the request, either way, is appropriate, whatever the commission decides.
And I agree with my fellow commissioners and support this style door as well. But I don't mean to muddy the water, but given the photographs that were supplied to us of the door, two things I noticed. It appears to be that the molding that surrounds the original opening and some of the original windows are the same. So I believe the moldings are the same. You even have the typical cork bead that runs at the edge of that molding. But when you look at the doors, they appear to be quite old, and there are some large pegs in the stiles that you would expect to see in a door that is actually in an antebellum period. Now, it could be that someone made it like that in the 1920s. So here, my question, but the solid panel glass and the solid side lights, definitely, that doesn't go with this house. So my question is, have you seen any evidence on that door of a rim lock, or like even in the molding where they would have had the keeper, anything that would suggest older hardware than what's on it now?
No. I think the hardware went with the door. Now, that's not to say that it couldn't have been replaced later. I mean, we know the door, well, we at least know the side lights are pre-1948 because we've got the photo. What is muddy on the photo is it kind of looks like there's solid doors on the photo from 1948, but that could just be glass reflecting, making it look solid. And it's a bit of a grainy photo that was taken from a newspaper. But so we could probably say that the doors are pre-1948, and I'm still kind of leaning toward that between 1900 and 1920 area for it. A convenient time to do that would be kind of when they first redid the front porch as well. There's something about the doors, there's like a thinness to them and a narrowness of the stiles, and then you just kind of couple it with the narrowness of the columns they put out in front, that there was kind of a naive kind of thing going on there that leads me to believe they were basically the same time. But that's my theory.
Well, given this
may not be true.
Given this ambiguity, I would support the change that you're recommending.
So, all right, so do you or Ms. Besser want to make an amendment so we're perfectly clear on the doors? Since the recommendation from staff is that the Historic Zoning Commission make a determination of age, original or non-original, and consider for approval accordingly. So I'm wanting to get an amendment that we approve, if that's the commission's vote, approve the door change or door recommendation as proposed by the applicant. And that includes the side lights too.
Correct. So I would make an amendment that would accept Mr. Coffey's proposal for the doors, replacing them with solid doors and replacing the existing side lights with multi-pane side lights to be approved by staff.
Is there a second to Ms. Besser's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right, Josh is no. All right, we're 6-1 on that. Okay. I guess front porch, or wait a minute, the front, let's do the front windows. Are there any more comments on the front windows, or just trying to see what,
I thought we put windows to bed.
pardon me?
I said, I thought we put windows to bed.
Well, I'm getting a little foggy at this hour.
We haven't addressed the window on the 1920s edition that's
Yeah,
smaller.
did we, I don't know that we addressed the windows on the main structure, because that's a change from the 1/1s that I see to the 6/6s, and then the positioning of the windows. There was a comment somewhere about that, but
I think I can do, I would move to approve the windows as submitted by the applicant.
Okay.
With staff comments on the 1920 edition window not being changed.
So, Ms. Pierce, your comment is in keeping with the overall motion, so I don't know that
I
that
don't know.
Oh, we
amendment
don't
is
need
necessary.
another, okay.
okay, we're good then on the, all right,
Okay.
good. Forget that then. All right, let's go.
Because the motion was, I was a little muddy on this, but the original motion was with staff conditions, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So can we call for
Okay.
the vote on that? Is that right?
We don't need to do that. We just do that as part of the main motion.
Oh, okay.
That'll just be folded in.
Okay.
What else have we not covered? The porch and the columns and all of that, is that?
So it appears to me that you've discussed the windows, the shutters probably still need to be discussed unless that wraps up with the windows. The 1920 window opening adjustment's been discussed. The siding, if you want to comment on siding, but that's a typical comment then, and staff's recommending it move forward with a plan being brought forward to staff.
Have gutters been addressed on this plan?
No, I think the original old house has gutters, and I think that we did talk about that. It may not be on this proposal, that we plan to do the half-round gutters on the main part. There's an integral gutter system on that right side that I think we want to do away with because it's just a huge problem. And do a conventional gutter that, you know, probably has more of the molding shape guttered as opposed to the half-round.
Well, so if I made the motion to approve with staff comments and with gutters coming back to staff for approval.
Can I ask a question first? Is there going to be gutters on the front porch?
Likely, yes.
Okay. I would want to make sure that the downspout resides between the shutters on the front facade and not down the columns.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Back at the back, we'll endeavor to do that. I think there's enough space.
Is that enough to add another amendment? This is number 3 here.
I think you should.
That's important.
State it, Ken.
I'll
Okay.
second Ken's motion.
The gutters at the porch will have the downspouts located against the front facade of the house.
Okay, and Mary seconded that. Any other comments on the gutters? All right, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that was unanimous. What are we missing here then?
I just want to make sure I know there was the comment about configuration of windows could be adjusted based on interior design, and I think it's clear that that is not part of the motion to approve, but I just want to make sure we're really clear on that. But that's.
Right, that
I
is
know
part
you
of
said it,
staff's
I just want to make sure it's,
recommendation.
yeah.
And, you know, I know, I've worked with Kevin for several years, and I know he'll come forward and talk to me. And staff will, you know, take some liberties to adjust, like, you know, a few inches here or there, but that's just really, I want to be able to look at that on your behalf and make those determinations.
All right, are there any other areas that we need to address?
I got one more question.
All right, Ken.
On the rear of the building, it appears that the envelope of the building's not changing, but at the rear of the house, the base is existing split-face block. Will that remain?
I believe what we're going to do there is more of a parge coating on that base. It's kind of more of a little bit better solution than the split face.
It looks like a commercial kind of.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of the places where we were trying to figure out where the old stopped and the new. There's a little bit of stone foundation that just kind of barely turns a corner, and then it turns to split face. So yeah, we don't want it to be split face block.
Okay, we're back to the main motion as amended 3 times.
So before we wrap it
cover?
up, I have one more question, because
Make it
it relates to the very last item, and it has to do with the floodplain fringe overlay. So there's a comment here that's been made about an update to floodplain maps. Is it expected that this house will come out of the 100-year floodplain?
I am not the floodplain administrator, certainly, but it's my understanding that if the applicant times out the improvements proposed to this structure, that it can be done when the property is not located in the floodplain fringe overlay, because the maps will reflect a change that will cause the entirety of this structure to be out. The outbuildings will still be in the floodplain.
And so the floodplain will not affect them, even though their lot, there's a part of their lot that's in the floodplain. Even if it doesn't come to the house, but but a portion of the lot is in the floodplain, that still leaves them out.
I have advised the owners several times, and I know that they are in conversation with Ms. McCoy, so we'll make sure that they are fully aware of any sort of implications currently and with any new flood maps that would be on this particular structure and those outbuildings.
And finally, we want to make sure that the applicant understands that by third reading of BOMA, that a new floodplain stipulation for the appraised value is going to affect January 1. I just want to make sure that that's understood.
Yeah, we're aware.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure they're very much aware of that. It could be a big difference for this project.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're back to the main motion amended 3 times. You want me to read the amendments again, or y'all got that in your head? Okay, then, are there any other questions on the main motion as amended? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay, good. Thank you. This is going to be a great treasure when it's completed. Thank you, thank you.
Amazing.
That's good.
This is getting very special.
Yeah. All right, we're ready for the next one, which is item number 10, consideration of rear addition at 408 Main Street.
Yes, the applicant's requesting the construction of a 2-story addition at the rear of this building. The addition is proposed to replace and alter the design of a deck that burned earlier this year and was subsequently demolished. The applicant appeared before the DRC at the July meeting to discuss the proposal. So I think everyone's aware this is where Red Pony is located on Main Street. You see that this was the deck that was previously there. It has been demolished in its entirety because of the substantial damage caused by the recent fire. I'm going to zoom in here. So the proposed addition consists of 868 square feet with the same footprint on the lower and the upper levels. So it's uniform on both the top and bottom. to be attached to the rear of the building. The addition's proposed to align roughly with the depth of the previous deck, but to expand across so it connects to this adjacent building here. So it's going to take up a little bit more space, but it's not going to come out any further into the alley. The deck is also had, let me go back to this photo and see if I can show it. There is a partially covered window. You can't really see it from this angle here, but the new addition will actually cover up the entirety of that window, so it is a little wider on both sides. The addition consists of a brick flat roof, a brick with a flat roof, and the existing roof line will not be impacted. You can see that it's not tying into or over the existing roof line. It will sit below. The guidelines recommend that ground additions be placed at rear elevations designed simply, consist of frame or brick construction, be identifiable and distinguished from the original structure. The zoning ordinance recommends that additions be of the same material as what you see for the building or adjacent building. So the DRC and staff recommended that this be a brick addition as opposed to a frame addition. The guidelines also recommend that sections of historic walls not be removed to allow for additions. So meaning that this rear wall should be preserved and maintained as much as possible, so that if this addition is removed in the future, that the historic structure is left intact as much as possible. Rear elevations are recommended to be simple in appearance and utilize single light glass and doors for their entrances. And HVAC's recommended to be screened at the rear. So in response to the recommendations of the staff and DRC, the conceptual proposal was amended to address concerns related to the building material and to the fenestration pattern. You can see this window pattern is much more historically typical than you would see on that previous deck. The applicants also stated the addition will allow for the maintenance of that historic rear wall. And I'll ask the applicant to confirm and elaborate on that. It also appears this design will allow for the removal of that addition without consequence to that rear wall if desired in the future, which is recommended by our Secretary of Interior Standards. The applicants also included a second option, and that was at staff's strong recommendation to them. This Plan B, which I'm going to skip to now, shows that there's the upper level enclosed, but the bottom level is actually open and just screened with fencing. And the reason that staff recommended that the applicant include that now for consideration is that the applicant's working to meet zoning ordinance requirements for parking. Whenever you increase heated, cooled square footage, you need to increase parking per zoning ordinance requirements currently. So the applicant's still working on the parking requirements, and so the applicant is asking for consideration and approval for both options this evening. They would like to build out the first option, but approval of both options would allow them to move forward indeterminate of what that parking situation may end up being. What you see here on the bottom is a fully screened area for utility purposes, an outdoor cooler, maybe some utilities or mechanical equipment. So it would be screened to meet the zoning ordinance requirements and the Historic District Design Guidelines recommendations. It is recommended the commission approve the addition with both options. The guidelines recommend that brick colors complement the dominant existing colors of the red and similar hues, and so the applicant must submit a brick sample to the staff for review and approval prior to work commencing. The same is true of window specifications, so specifications must be submitted for review and approval as well. There are some notes for the applicant that I provided courtesy of the Building Neighborhood Services Department on here about emergency egress and that sort of thing. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Would the applicant please introduce yourself and comment on the
Yes,
applications?
good evening. Remick Moore here, architect, Jason McConnell with me here tonight. So yeah, we're seeking to get approval on these options here so that we can move forward with the construction. Obviously, Red Pony's been down for a long time. We want to get them back up and running. as soon as possible. So we have worked with Amanda. She's been a great help, you know, making modifications and adhering to the guidelines, so we appreciate that. And I will speak to the addition. We are maintaining that rear wall to where it could, you know, we're not messing with the rear wall, really. We're just sort of trying to add back what he had, make it more appealable and usable for him. And then as far as the upstairs goes, and then as far as the downstairs goes, it's purely function, leaving his coolers in place that he had there prior to the fire and leaving it as some storage area. And so as we work through the zoning, you know, having these two options approved would be greatly helpful for us to continue construction. And then at that time, determine which option we could proceed with, of course, with Amanda's help.
Right, okay, good. Any citizens who wish to comment on the application? All right, if not, commissioners, we're on.
Well, I would make a motion to approve both options with staff comments.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
So I've got a question for the applicants. So the supplemental drawing is a non-conditioned space on the first floor?
Yes, sir.
Versus the other one is a fully conditioned space?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was just going to say, the original fully enclosed was for two reasons. One, that's where the origin of the fire was, and you had access to it prior to. And the other was we had a stairwell emergency stairwell that emptied into the alley when that now has been internalized and comes out into a safer area. So, and I will say about the two options, with that enclosure, it requires 7 parking spaces in perpetuity, forever, on a deed, within 1,200 feet. That's almost it's not almost, it is non-existent in downtown Franklin. I'm asking for a variance eventually. I have 42 parking spaces at 108 Bridge at McConnell House. So we'll have to see if that's even an option, if we can figure that out. If not, we'll go with an unconditioned, and if we can get a variance approved, then a fully conditioned. So,
And that's why you want to do the both options?
Yes, sir.
If we can approve
Right.
both of those, so that you've got some flexibility. Okay.
And this, you know, option B could be retrofitted. It could be that, you know, they build this and then enclose it later.
Let me ask a question about it says the applicants also stated the addition will allow for maintenance of the historic building's rear wall. I am assuming that if I'm on the inside that new addition, that I'm looking at the old wall.
Correct.
As I am looking when I go to the restaurant,
It's
I'm looking at the
exposed
brick walls everywhere else.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the question that I have is, if you do it with the parking, they'll just be open?
Oh, no.
No.
I can't see it. I mean, I
Yes, ma'am.
tried.
No.
on
The
your-
parking is off-site. The required
Outside,
parking
gotcha.
is off-site completely.
Okay.
There is no parking here,
This-
obviously, so
This is just so you don't have conditioned space that then ups your
That
parking.
causes.
increases the
gotcha,
parking.
To have
gotcha.
more
that's right,
spots.
yes.
Ideally, like I said, we're trying to prevent access to that space, but
Sure.
seven
Got it.
spaces is a high price.
So it'll technically be safe for your purposes and screened.
takes it off
But it's
the
not
table.
conditioned, so you don't have to,
If-
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Got
option
it.
2.
that's right.
I got it.
It's a square footage game, yeah.
Any other questions? Ready to vote? All in favor then of the motion as presented then, with both options being in this motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Item 11, consideration of alterations windows at 317 Main Street. Victoria, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for alterations to the second floor fenestration at 317 Main Street. This is at the corner of Public Square and Main Street, and you might better recognize it as the Mellow Mushroom Building. The proposed work includes adding 3 new windows on the second story of the rear facade that faces the alley. And the proposed windows will match the windows that are existing on the building, and it fits with the fenestration pattern of the building. When this facade was redone, they laid the brickwork to make it appear as though windows had been there previously. And so this is where they are proposing to put the new windows. Installing the new windows fits with the rhythm and spacing of the window design on the rear. So it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission approve the proposed window alterations with the following conditions. Window specifications must be approved by the preservation planner or the HCC before work commencing. The new windows must have the same cast stone headers and sills to match the existing windows. The application must meet all of the requirements of building and neighborhood services, and any additional changes to the approved plans must be returned to the preservation planner for review for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Would the applicant please comment on the application?
Trent Sullivan, Emma Fist. I think this one's pretty simple. What we're trying to do here is replace brick windows with real windows and put them back in the positions where they're currently reliefs in the brick. And we agree with staff recommendations. We would certainly have the sill and headers in stone and make windows that match the existing.
Okay, any citizens wish to comment on the application? Running thin. All right. Need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve with conditions of certificate of appropriateness for the proposed window alterations.
I second that.
Ms. Besser? Thank you. Any comments? Questions?
I just got a question. What is, I'm just curious, what is the space that you're opening up into?
In that area, it's going to be, one of the windows is a break room maybe, and the other one is an office space?
This is open office space?
Yeah.
Open up, okay.
Office space.
I'm just curious.
Is that it? Ready to vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Quick. One more. Consideration of alterations rooftop windscreen and shade structure at 231 Public Square.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This proposal is to add these modern features to the rooftop at 231. The applicant's proposing to place a 6-foot-tall windscreen on top of the existing 4-foot-tall parapet walls to be mounted with brackets at 3 locations. And you can see those on the screen here where the orange is. This side faces Public Square. This side faces East Main. And this side faces the parking lot behind this building. The screens consist of 5-foot wide panels and measure 1/2 inch in thickness. An aluminum shade structure is also proposed. You can see an example of that here in the photograph. The proposal is to have this black to match the existing metal finishes on the building and to be located in this orange shaded area here. This area roughly corresponds with this outlined area here. So the windscreen and then the shade structure, all the spaces, Public Square. It would be 10 feet tall, so it would actually match the height of the proposed windscreens once they're on top of the parapet walls. So it'd be 4-foot walls, 6-foot screens, and then the 10-foot tall metal structure. On the on the shade structure, this is an operable material. I believe it's sort of a canvas, but it's not clear. That would be open air unless it's closed. This side would not be closed, but it would have the windscreen abutting it, so it would almost be like a semi-enclosed space. The guidelines state that modern roof elements should be installed if desired, so they are not visible from the street. The applicant's photographs of similar windscreen placements on other buildings demonstrates visibility. So I'll go to that photograph so you can see that. You can see the glass here. Part of it's because of glare. Glare is definitely a concern with an element like this. Even though it is transparent, it will be highly visible due to bracketing, the panel breaks, and due to the glare. The applicant has provided this, which is really helpful in better understanding the intent. The proposed windscreens at 6 feet tall will be visible from Public Square very highly, as well as East Main Street, which is at a pivotal downtown intersection. No conceptual renderings have been provided to demonstrate the potential conditions of such the visual impact, the reflectivity, bracket locations. The proposed shade structure will offer high visibility as well due to its prominent placement and material at Public Square. The upper framing enclosed shade may draw attention to the roof line of the fourth story, which it was approved to be recessed specifically so that it would lessen the building scale and massing. So this would call attention to something that was approved previously to lessen attention. No conceptual renderings, again, have been provided to demonstrate those potential conditions for visibility impact. So with that, it is recommended that the commission deny the proposed alterations. The fire bowls, I do want to note, the applicant's proposing fire bowls to be located here. Those are not items that the commission needs to consider for a COA, so those could move forward as long as they meet all other city requirements. There are some notes I provided on the report and recommendation for the benefit of the applicant because there is currently a building permit being reviewed for this build out for this group that is running out the top, and it does not include these elements. These elements need to be included in a revised building permit for structural considerations. Thank you.
Okay. You're on.
Thank you. Trent Sullivan, MFS, Lines Inc. We are the architects of record for this project. We are representing Able Design Group out of Colorado. And so we are here to discuss this project with you and get your recommendations. And so the windscreens, our client is aware of the 5 requirements in the guidelines, and it seems that guideline that we're up against is visibility from the street. And so what we're seeking to have clarity on is, what does visibility from the street mean? Is that visibility from standing? Is it from riding in a car? Is it from a seated view? How far away from the building? So that we can design to the appropriateness. And so the question that we're asking is, what is visibility from the street? And they had an awareness of this, and so that's why they're proposing glass for a windscreen to be less visually impacting. And we've had subsequent discussions since this proposal was placed that they'd like to lower these panels to be 48 inches above the parapet and be 60 inches wide. And so that would need to be resubmitted to you, I understand. But 6 feet is actually very limiting for us to construct a glass and have it be frameless. That's the design intent, to have frameless glass panels so that you wouldn't see vertical risers. And then with regard to the shade structure, this was a solution as opposed to them putting a pop-up tent that they could put up and take down and put up and take down.
That wouldn't be permitted by zoning.
What's that?
Tents would not be.
I don't think you can restrict furniture. So this would be a furniture item. Anything that's put up can be taken down as furniture, and that's the way that they were looking at it. So this is a proposal to have something more permanent, more elegant, and more defined. So,
You want to comment, Kelly?
We'd want to confirm that with our Building and Neighborhood Services Department, because umbrellas aren't permitted on rooftops because they could fly away and pose a public safety danger.
No, wait a minute. Is that all you've got then? on
It's
this?
not an umbrella, I mean, it's a pop-up.
Okay, but is
Yeah.
this all you've got on the, before we get to deliberating here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any citizens left to comment on this application? All right, then we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move to defer this. I think this is something that I hope the applicant would come to design review for. It's a big deal. We haven't done anything like this. So I would move to defer this item to the next meeting and suggest they come to design review.
To the October meeting.
Yes, sir.
All right, is there a second on deferral?
I'll second.
Any discussion on deferral?
There's no issue with timing as far as for council. There's no issue with timing.
No,
on having a
other than
deferral. We're
October
good.
meeting, that's
Okay.
what, that's.
You
what
have to
deferral
defer
is.
to a time specific.
Yeah.
It would be really helpful if there were any sort of comments or direction that the,
I'll be glad to make a comment. I'm totally against any kind of windscreen, glass windscreen on top of the parapet wall. This one is, based on this presentation, it would be an overall 10 feet above the base, the floor of the roof. The problem I have with it, you ask about visibility, when in the late afternoon especially, coming up with that west sun on that glass, you got a problem.
And,
And I don't, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's 6 feet above or 10 feet, or you lower it down some, it's still gonna be an issue. So and we spent a lot of time on that building. So I'm opposed to any kind of a wind screen up there.
And I think one of the challenges you have, if it's visibility from the street, there are a lot of streets around there where you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
stand on the opposite side of the square and you can see, so you might be at street level and looking straight up and not be able to see it if you're right in front of the building, but there's a lot of areas of street, so.
I think that glare, that's what hit me first, because I've been trying to drive Main Street and have that sun right in my eyes anyway, and then I know what it's gonna bounce
Yeah.
off that glass and look like. So that would be my objection to a wind screen, just for initial feedback. I don't have any problem deferring this.
Yeah.
But,
It's not contextual with the building or downtown.
No.
It's just, it's completely out of context.
and it's, to me, just completely changing the character of that incredibly elegant building. If you were the architect, it's a beautiful building. And that's
But-
my issue.
okay,
And
we
I
got
was- yeah.
a motion to defer. So are there any other comments on this? Just any other feedback to give them? But if not, all in favor of the motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
thank you, and I'll add you to your-
Work with them on
Okay,
the
thank you very much.
next Monday. All right, I don't think we have anything else. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please stand as you're able. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, I must be better with my clothes.